My take on that particular matter is, first of all, we want to send our condolences to the family of Ojwang. Yeah. Indeed, it was not a good incident that happened. It was very unfortunate that that incident actually happened in the hands of the police, who were actually supposed to be protecting the citizens. But that notwithstanding, those are two different issues from my end, such that justice for Ojwang should not be intertwined with the issue of the budget, because even if that issue was very unfortunate and the public has a right to protest, on the other side, it is very important that we have a budget that is running, and we would rather be objective and face the issues within the budget itself, other than entertain sideshows and not deal with the issues within the budget that affect wananchi. So if we try to intertwine the two, then we will not keep our eyes on the ball, yeah, and the budget might find itself running without proper check by the public.
Right, Mr. Nick, what's your take on that particular matter? You know, protesters are, chanting slogans, justice for, no justice for Ojwang, no budget, and placing placards, no justice for Ojwang, no budget. What's your take on that particular matter?
Martin,
yeah,
it's a sad month, because we are almost clocking 13 days from now.
Yeah.
We are clocking almost 1 year since us young people went to the street. And it is a sad thing, because the issue of Albert, it is not a light thing, because it takes us back to why we young people were back on the street. The issue of the economy. These are some of the things that Albert was tweeting on X. The issue of employment, the issue of having a fair, equal share as a young person,
right,
in this country. It is not a light issue, and in as much as we want to say that today's budget has nothing to do with Albert, I think in my personal view it has everything to do with Albert, because how many Alberts are there that are currently missing, who have been reported? As we report, over 80 Kenyans still. Some are dead, some reported dead, some are reported not to be found, some are still locked in cells. Right. And we are asking ourselves, Martin,
yeah,
whose country is this? Why did we get such a terrible government? Who is supposed to put these powerful people, in quotes, into check? Right. Because today is Albert. Yeah. And we feel very sad with the family. It's been a sad moment for young people all this week, because I'm left, because young people in our party are asking me, SG, you are a young person.
Right.
What do you have to say about Albert? Why is it not pinching these people? Are these people parents? Have they raised up young people like that Baba Albert? Because Albert was the only son.
Yeah, true.
And Albert has a wife and I think a 5-year-old child.
Yeah.
And these are the questions that Kenyans are asking. Until when? Because what you are seeing on the street today of CBD, it's a culmination of why Kenyans are very upset. Why, Martin, that we are living in the same country, yet we are discussing on the issue of budgeting, right?
Yeah.
Yet the important issues of killings that have not been addressed.
Yeah.
The important issues that young people are saying that enough is enough. Because if it's not about budgeting, Martin, yeah, then what was Albert talking about in the first place? That is a question that we're asking.
All right. Even as we build the basis of this particular conversation, let's take a look on the budget estimates of 2025, 2026, which is scheduled to be tabled in Parliament later on in the afternoon with CS John Mbadi. And the estimates, the budget estimates for 2025, 2026, the national government is been allocated 2.49 trillion, that is include, the executive, judiciary, and the parliament, and the consolidated fund service has been allocated 1.36 trillion. That is the expenditure on loan, interest, pension, and resources for constitutional offices. County governments will share 405 billion Kenya shillings, which sums up to 4.23 trillion Kenya shillings. Now, in the education sector, 701.9 billion estimate, that is the 28% has been allocated to the education sector. Energy, infrastructure, and ICT has been allocated 500.7 billion Kenya shillings, that is 20%. Now, the public admin and IR has been allocated 3.21 billion Kenya shillings. Health, 137 billion. Agriculture and urban development has been allocated 78 billion, that is 3%. Now, even as we build on the, the basis of this particular conversation, let's draw back in the year 2022. The elections were about the hustler. We want to uplift the hustler, the so-called hustler, mama mbogas and border riders. And the hustler was to be traded, was the currency to be traded for the votes. Now, in 2025, 1,000 days plus later, we're looking at a budget of 2025-2026. Now, the question is the hustlers' grievances being addressed?
First of all, Martin,
Yeah.
It's a sad state today that today we are reading budget 2025-2026. Yet I'm hoping the CS will also address the issue of our public debt as well as we go on the issue of budgeting, because as we speak, our budget. Public budget debt has clocked into 11.2 trillion. That brings us to close. That if you do your math quickly, a quick math,
Yeah.
that you divide 50 million of population, and you see that per day, each Kenyan, whether young or old, you are debted 240,000 per minute. That is how crazy it is. Yet, the CS will comfortably tell you that there's no VAT that is added on the bread. SHA is serving very well, yet he will not address the issue of 2.7% increment of the SHA in the budget. These are the issues that we want them addressed. Apart from that, you've said it very well. The hustler government came in with a lot of promises, saying that hii serikali itakuwa ya mama mboga na vijana wa boda boda. I will address the issues of youth because that is the classification that I am coming from. The young people have been put on the clouds of just voters. They are spectators of this country. The government only needs us in terms of mobilization and in terms of politics. But when it comes to issue of unemployment, we want to see that this budget addressing it. We want to see a budget that is favoring the young people, because 2022-2023 we had a budget, right?
Yeah.
2023-2024 we had another budget. 2024-2025 we have had another budget. Now we are clocking into 2025-2026. It means this is the fourth budget. Yet the same issues of young people still remain the same. Unemployment has rose up from 65%. We are currently at 87%. So we are asking ourselves again, this budget, who really does it serve?
All right. Mr. Moshemi, do you share the same views as Mr. Nick?
I do, but even before I weigh in on that,
Yeah.
I want to do a quick rejoinder on the issue of Ojwang.
Right.
Because I agree with him that the incident is quite unfortunate and the killings are very unfortunate in this country. However, I still reiterate that objectivity is key. Because remember, the budget process will still flow. And what has been happening in our country is that most instances, we don't keep our eye on the ball. we find ourselves dealing with the sideshows, and our MPs and our senators will still pass the bill. The budget will still move on despite the hullabaloos that we make on the street. My view is, even as we protest on the issue of Ojwang, yes, we must protest on the issue of Ojwang, but even as we do so, let us interrogate the issue of the budget as is, as a very separate issue. Because if we mix the two, then we lose our eye on the ball. That is my rejoinder. Now, on the issue of the budget, I want to say that I agree with him. We in a very sorry state as a country. There are pros and cons. One, just to give a positive side, is that the budget comes in at a time when we are shifting from cash basis accounting to accrual basis accounting as a country. And that is a good thing, because at all times we shall be taking into account our assets and liabilities as is, such that, for instance, if it's a county government, when you get your money, if you have liabilities, they are already secured as liabilities. So if you get 5 billion, for instance, and you have a liability of 2 billion, you can only budget for 3. That is the main essence of the accrual system. Remember, the system we have been having is that despite you having committed several commitments in the past financial year, when you get the new budget in the next financial year, those come in as pending bills instead of coming in as liability. So then you have to plead with the county to cater for pending bills. But when it is now an accrual system, they will come in as liabilities. So they have to be taken care of. So it's a good thing. However, I think as a country, we are going in the wrong trajectory, because we are more, our budget looks like a consumer budget rather than an enabling budget, if I would say. Because I think as a country, we will be thinking more of how to make ourselves self-sustainable. And by making ourselves self-sustainable, we should be thinking, if we are to industrialize as a country, for instance, what should we do? Then we look at issues like energy, which in our country is one of the issues that are barring industrialization. Right. Because energy is too high. And what has made energy to become too high? It is these independent power purchase agreements that are making our energy. Yes, we have a lot of energy being generated by KenGen. We have in excess. But we have these power purchase agreements that are there, that are in our country, that is making. So what do we do with them? We need to buy off these power purchase agreements so that we can have a way to control our energy. Because we have excess of energy. KenGen, every other time they are being called to reduce what they are taking to the grid, because the energy that is coming from the power purchase agreement has to be purchased. Right. Because we are in agreements with those people. So we need to figure out things like those in our budget. But if you look at our budget, we are more consumer-based. We want to renovate, we want to build something, but we are not thinking on how to empower our people. The other thing is we have a lot of wastage in our budget, because remember, Martin, even the PFM provides on a percentage of what should be in the development budget and what should be in the recurrent budget. Right. But remember, budget is based on the Finance Act. There is no scientific method to come up with the Finance Act, such that it is left at the discretion of the Treasury. And that's why sometimes it's very unreasonable, because they will say, we think we will accumulate, we will make this collection within this financial year. And at times, we don't reach to the threshold or the wish list that as a Treasury we have made. Now, here is the problem. Budget, for you to contract, then something must be in the budget. There is no prioritization list. Right. Such that if you if you had wished to collect $1 billion, and out of the billion there is money meant for renovation, it is discretional to prioritize renovation and leave out very essential issues. So a budget might have so many things which are essential and unessential, but it is discretional to the implementer on what to prioritize. Such that I think as Parliament, there should be some of these laws that should come in, such that even if you have a budget and you have the Finance Act, one, prioritization should be controlled, such that there are those issues that are very essential, they must be catered for first. Before, if you get an excess of this funding, then you can go to the non-essential issues. Number two, the Finance Act should be very scientific. It should be based on the previous collection, the collection of the previous year. So that you don't just wake up and say, I think next year as a country you can be able to collect 5 trillion shillings. But how scientific is that?
Right.
It should be based on what you have done in the past. Then maybe you can have a margin, 1 or 2%, something of the sort, and you have to stick to that percentage. Then you can, that way, we will be able to manage our expectation as a country. So I think we're in a sorry state, but it's because of how we have left a lot of discretion on the Treasury, on one, how to raise the expectation in the Finance Act, and two, we have left a lot of discretion to the executive on how to implement the budget itself.
Now, speaking about the prioritization, there is this matter of zero-rated and versus exempt. You find that farm inputs have been put on exempt as opposed to zero-rated. Now, that would mean the cost of producing food will go high. Now, from where you see it, Mr. Alex, do you think that Kenyans should actually be involved in the budget-making process?
They should. But you see, constitutionally, they are, because the members we elect into Parliament are the ones passing the budget on our behalf, exercising that role on our behalf. And I think the problem begins with how we vote, because the leaders we put in are generally not very objective leaders. So we will say, yes, as a public we participate through our representatives. But there should be a way of ensuring that we participate even more effectively. The CEO's Treasury keeps on saying that he has collected views. But remember, those views, there is no way of demonstrating that he has accommodated all those views. Actually, I find it very weird for him to say that he has been in every public participation, because it is very difficult to be in every public participation forum in this country as one individual. So it already tells you that whatever they are doing is not effective enough. Because I read today's paper and I saw he was saying he has been in every public participation forum. How then can you spread yourself as an individual? I thought he would have said, as Treasury, we had this number of teams collecting views from this side, and demonstrate how those views have been accommodated into the budget. But remember what I said, you can accommodate all those views into the budget, but not implement them. Because most of the time, we don't achieve what we had targeted to collect in the Finance Act. So all these other good things will be left in the budget on paper, but we will implement what we wanted to implement. But that error becomes because the Finance Act already has no scientific way of developing it. So you will expand the Finance Act so that you can be able to fix your wish list in the budget and still accommodate what the public wants to see. Then you will prioritize what you want. Yes.
Mr. Nick, do you share the same views as Mr. Alex? Should the Kenyans be prioritized in the budget-making process?
Well, I agree completely with Alex, Mr. Alex, and as you can hear, he's speaking from a point of information. And our main concern as young people is, because you see, a budget is a prospect. It's not something that we already have the money that is in play that we're going to use. Our main concern is that we set up a budget, and as Mr. Alex is saying, we don't have audit processes. That the previous budget, how was it utilized? How was it funded? how did the money, how was it used? So it becomes a question whether budgeting should start from as lower representation from our county assembly to the national government, because what we are seeing is this, because we are seeing double taxation at our county levels, because how the constitution has been made, or how it has been formulated in a way that counties are mini counties, are mini countries, that they have to have their own budget as well, they have to sustain themselves, and they have also to have an implementation structure from the government. I'm trying to think about this way, Martin.
Yeah.
I'm coming from Nairobi County, and I'm also a Kenyan. So it means I will pay tax, my tax level will be calculated first as a Nairobian. And then it will be now extrapolated to me as a Kenyan. So your question about food products.
Yeah.
For example, bread, because bread is the most common product we have as a Kenyan. I don't think there are very few families that survive without bread in our country.
Right.
It's all over. So wheat, we've had tax probably in the process of planting, the process of using fertilizers. There's accumulated tax. Apart from that, we have a 5% manufacturing tax. Apart from that, we have an additional 16% of the VAT now on the bread. So you can imagine right from the manufacturing, right from planting to how I'm consuming bread, it's taxation, taxation, taxation. Yet we know that on average, minimum wage of a person who's employed, the average is almost 35,000. The average wage bill of our country is 35,000. And we know, I told you that employment rate is at 33%, because 87% of 18 and above are still not employed. So how do we now sustain this budget? Those are the questions that we are asking ourselves. One, we will either overtax people.
Yeah.
What will that lead? Retaliation, what we are seeing on the street today. After retaliation, we have scenarios like young people going to the streets, right? Trying to fight for their rights because they don't have jobs. They are forced to pay tax. And there are also additional tax that cannot be explained, like 1.5% on housing levy. Allegedly, that is also supposed to fund our budget. So those are the crazy, crazy things that we as young people and as a country, we are feeling as if the heat is on us.
Right.
The heat is really on us. Because if the government can find a way, right, they increase. And I like what Mr. Alex proposed as a part of a solution. Industrialization has really been overlooked in our country, because we have young people who have gone to school to do great degrees, but our government has only reduced our thinking to construction site, that we only have to go to affordable housing kwa mjengo so that we earn a wage bill. You see, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And you see, what the government of the day does not understand, the young people are very creative, Martin, and the ideas that they can have to shape this country is beyond even the president. The only thing that they're asking for is an opportunity to be included in making this budget, in being part of also funding the process of funding the budget, and also the process of building a country. The other thing that probably we will want to look at, probably discuss about it, there are so many quote unquote corrupt, it's a budgeted corruption that we find a way to put corruption through our budget. That how you explain that, for example, a particular ministry has an office that has no workers completely, but there's a budget that is in play. So again, as I started, this budget has to be funded. Where is the funding coming from? Largely, as we've seen, it's coming from our tax. And even if it's coming from loans that's acquired from probably World Bank, we still have to pay for them. That's the pitch of common mwananchi.
Yeah.
Yes.
On that context of prioritizing the common mwananchi, if the hustler was really to be put into consideration, how would this budget look like, given that the common mwananchi is put at the center stage of the budget?
Well, you see, if the common mwananchi is put at the center of the budget, Martin, as we speak, young people have tried to open business in this country, but due to crazy certifications, right from compliance, right to certificate of good conduct. You need a certificate of good conduct to open a business. So you need a goodwill. You see, those are taxation processes. By the time you want to start a business, you're already tired. You're already tired. And then, you see, starting a business is not a miracle process that you'll open a business here and by the next minute, you have what? Profits. The dynamics of the economy runs on its own. What we are saying, first, how to cushion the common mwananchi. There are those people who believe that they cannot seek employment, but they can seek starting businesses. How can the government of the day cushion that process so that they become part of the taxpayers and the part of the budget? Number two, you've brought up a very good question about what we plant on our gardens. Today, what we eat from Mama Mboga is becoming also very expensive.
Right.
If you get sukuma wiki, today you go to sukuma wiki, three leaves today goes at 15 bob. 3 leaves. Previously, it will go at 5 bob, 3 leaves. Now it's at 15 bob. You try and bargain with Mama Mboga, he will tell you, even though mimi nimenunua kwa soko. So right from onset, because I told you, the farming process is becoming very expensive. The consumer also process is becoming very expensive. The business process also becoming very expensive. We cannot sustain ourselves, both as Mama Mboga and vijana, in this budget. Because in as much as we try to bring solutions on the table, tumefinyiliwa kila mahali. That's my view.
Now, Mr. Alex, if really, for every regime is to put into priority its citizens, if really the budget of 2025-2026 was to put the hustler at the center stage, how would that look like?
First, I agree with my colleague in terms of there is a lot of bureaucracy in this country if you want to start a business. To cite one, I think one of the greatest enemies we have as a business entity is something we call KEBS. Because everybody will tell you they want to start up something, but KEBS is very frustrating, exceedingly frustrating. Some of these bureaucracies, I think we have to figure out a way to reduce them. I have always said that Huduma Center was a very good idea because it enables people to get government services within one platform. I think we should figure out a way to have another center like Huduma Center for if you want to open a business entity. So you just go to one roof, you're told you need to apply for a business certificate, go to that shelf. You want KEBS, go to that shelf. And you get feedback instantly. So that if you want to start a business, you don't need to just to grapple around in town, figuring out where is Kipi. You want to protect an idea. Where is KEBS? Then you have to go this other direction. So as a youth, living in Wajir, you feel very frustrated already. So some of these bureaucracies have to be reduced if our citizens. Because at the end of the day, as my colleague said, if you are to enable Mwananchi, it is not a matter of him earning wages from construction sites. You have to enable Mwananchi by enabling Mwananchi to start their own businesses. You have to enable Mwananchi through giving them an opportunity to industrialize and exercise their mind. Government must be an enabler. Government should not be a doer. When government is constructing houses, instead of enabling private citizens to construct the houses, it is already a problem. Government should not budget to build the houses. Government should, for instance, give tax rebates to people who are doing affordable housing, enable roads to those affordable houses, all those, enable the process of obtaining ownership documents easy, so that now partner with a private entity, a private person, through PPP projects, then they come and do the affordable housing. PPP is a very brilliant idea we have in this country, but again, bureaucracy. Why should we be constructing roads in this country, whereas we can have toll roads that are created by, constructed by people who have the ability to do the construction? Then we use our money to do other things. And people will pay for those toll roads as they drive through them. Then you find somebody who does not even use a road is bearing the burden of that road. But if you get a private citizen through PPP, because they can afford to do it, they do a road, then only the people who are using the road pay tolls to that road because they are using the road and they are benefiting from the road.
Right.
They pay the toll, so the road is constructed. Then the government can use those funds, for instance, to give to reduce the cost of medication, to give free education. Then that way you enable your citizens to be more productive. But now this time the government, and that's why I said our budget is in a sorry state, because it is more consumer based other than an enabler budget. The other thing is we have devolution,
Right.
which is also a very good idea that is in our constitution. But what has happened? We should be devolving agriculture, we should be devolving health, but we have another budget for agriculture and health at the national government. What are those people doing with the money? If you look at the constitution, the national government, in terms of some of these concurrent functions like health and agriculture, their job is only to do policy, nothing else.
True.
But now they have a whole budget, I don't know to do what. Something more than policy. So now we have two sets of budgets. County has a budget for health, national government has a budget for health. Then we end up wasting our money. That's why you see the CS health will always be traveling, because the money she has nothing to do here.
Right.
She can only travel around the country, the world, trying to do benchmarking.
Yeah.
And again, we'll never see the results of the benchmarking they have gone to do.
Right.
The last thing now that I have spoken about benchmarking is how do we audit this benchmarking that these people go to do? I wish if you go for a benchmarking, we can fund you. If you come back and we don't see you implementing whatever you went to do within a year, we should recover the money that we gave you to go, because that was a personal trip.
Right.
It stops being a benchmarking trip, because what are you doing with the information? So we always see people going, we never see what they are doing. You will see them going, you never see what they are doing, which is a very sorry state in this country.
Now, in 2013, the then Treasury CS, that is Henry Rotich in Uhuru Kenyatta's administration, announced the austerity measures, and for the first time it sounded like it's a significant thing happening in our country. Now, the announcement was made, the budget policy statement was banning a number of things. Number one, the office tea and snacks, fresh flowers, decorations, lavish foreign trips, newspaper subscriptions, workshops and retreats in very high-end hotel. That was part of a broader government to cut the wastage by at least 50% revenue. Now, the question is, how do we track this wastage?
You see, unless you make it a crime to do those things, then who audits? If you have an office in Upper Hill, you're sitting in a big office where you have a big TV and you're being served tea and snacks after every two hours, who will audit that? Because you see, every office, they will always be given some cash to run around, some recurrent expenditure to run around, but who will audit those small expenditures? And that's why I said some of these, for instance, the lavish trips, who will, if you say you went to a trip, the only thing the Auditor General can do is to check whether process was followed when you are going for the trip. Did you have the necessary approvals, all those things. But what did you do after coming back? Nobody. There is no way to audit that.
Right.
So you can keep going. You will keep going. You can go every 1 week. There are people who change clothes at the airport. Go to another benchmarking trip. Go to another benchmarking trip. But now who audits that? And that's why I said, one, there should be, if you go there should be a maximum number of trips within a financial year. Anything you do over and above those trips, you should fund it by yourself.
Right.
There should be a feedback mechanism. If we don't see you implementing what you want to do, we should recover. We have to create mechanisms. But just making pronouncements does not help. We have to figure out a way to ensure these people are brought to book.
Now, Mr. Alex, even as we look at the estimates of the budget of 2025-2026, State House has been allocated 8.5 billion shillings in total. The recurrent, expenditures is 7.6 billion, and the money allocated for development is 894 million. The Office of the President has been allocated 5.3 billion in total. 3.8 billion in recurrent expenditure and 1.5 billion in development. The Office of the Deputy President has been allocated 2.9 billion, 2.8 billion in recurrent expenditure and 100 million in development. So, this lavish living, and you hear that State House has to be renovated. What is your take on this particular matter?
Martin,
yeah.
I was really constraining myself to discuss the issue of empowerment programs, because where you see the budgeted things within the Office of the President. We've recently seen, like last year, the Office of the President was budgeted around 900 million on just renovation. Yet we lack money for capitation, Martin.
Yes.
Yet we lack money to take our kids to school. Yet we lack money for hospitals, constructions, hospitals, facilities, hospital medication. Yet we lack money. Our doctors are constantly on the street. Martin. It is a sad state that this is how the state has found its way to budget corruption. Because how do you budget more than 3 billion in an office? To do what? Then Kenyans are lied in a way. They are put in a cocoon to be convinced that this is part of empowerment programs, that they should go there and receive mboshos and warus in the name of building them. That is what we are saying as young people, that enough is enough. We cannot be fooled. As the government of the day like to say, wajinga wameisha hii Kenya. That these young people who are the majority voters of this country have gone to school. They can see through the lies that they are treating us. Mr. Martin.
Yeah.
It cannot be that we lack drugs in hospitals, yet we have money to renovate State House. I was doing a quick math. We have done renovation of Nakuru State Lodge. We have done renovation of Mombasa State Lodge.
Right.
Recently, we have done renovation of Homa Bay State Lodge. So it means we have money, but we don't have money when it comes to our kids going to school. I was recently reading that the Kibaki regime that has gone from 2002 for over 23 years, that parents have tried to push their children to school. Do you know, I will tell you something, Martin.
Yeah.
Some of us, while we were growing up,
Yeah.
that our parents used to bring firewood in exchange of us to going to school. That they will deliver firewood every single day. They will bring up a bale or a sack of waru to make sure that we're still in school. Now, our schools, first, we are still struggling with the curriculum, right?
Yeah.
A curriculum that is supposed to be neutral for somebody in Nairobi and for somebody in Wajir and Turkana. Yet we are supposed to produce the same amount of qualification on these kids. We are asking ourselves as young people, where is our country going? We have a lot of, we even wondering. Our sitting president has over 20 senior advisory council in his government.
Yeah.
So what are these people advising him to do exactly? Right from education, right from law, right from economy, right from policy making. Do you want to tell me that there is no single person who is giving a legit advice in this government? Do you want to tell me, Martin, that our country is going down the stream in the mud and we cannot do anything about it? I saw, we've had, and I know Wakil is in that field. Recently, we've seen Professor Mutua, who is a Wakili.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He has been appointed as a senior advisory to the office of the president in matters of law. Yet we have serious cases like Albert Ojwang. This is what we are wondering. We want here to discuss that the office of the president and deputy president combined, the quick math, they're swooping in almost a clean 40 billion. And you're telling me the young people won't go back to the street? Because they know that this money will come from their pocket. It's a sad state to be in. It's a sad day to be a Kenyan. Martin.
Now, Mr. Alex, priorities of an average man, one will say education, health, and food. Now parents have to dig deep to their pockets to fund maybe education, to pay maybe for their examinations, for their national examinations. Now, one would ask the priority of when it comes to this budget, is it misplaced? Is it in the right place?
It is misplaced because what we keep saying. One, you had correctly said that they have all been taken. Okay, let me start by saying, now what the government has done in this budget is they have innovatively tried to demonstrate that they are not targeting Mwananchi, they are targeting the producer. And they are saying it is a bottom-up economy because now they are targeting the big fish, right, and not the small fish. But I want to remind the government that when you target the big fish, it still goes back to the small fish, because I will never produce any item at a loss. If I am producing and you overtax me or increase a tax burden to me, then by all means, I will transfer that tax burden downwards. So if you look at this budget, what the government is trying to do by targeting the producer is still targeting Mwananchi.
Right. Even
in those commodities like food and the other basic commodities that Mwananchi needs. So from where I sit, I think the budget is still targeting Mwananchi, but indirectly. But my colleague here has confirmed that their problem actually is the prioritization list that we have in our budget. We don't have a way to prioritize issues, such that the government, in the budget might have so many good things, and you hide what you want as a government to achieve. then you will be left prioritizing what you wanted to achieve and wish away all these other good things that the public were fighting for. And you see, at the end of the day, all what matters is that it was in the budget. Even the control of budget, all she needs to check is that, was it in the budget? As long as it was in the budget, then it will be done. If renovation of State House was in the budget, it will be done. Even if there are no medicines or necessary machines at a referral hospital, and I want to renovate State House, I will renovate State House and forget about the hospital. Because both of them are in the budget. But we don't have funds to facilitate both of them. So we have to start from the finance bill. How do we have the money? I'll give an example of just a home, a household. If today, if in the previous years, I have been earning 100,000, then all of a sudden I think next year, this year I come home and tell my wife, this year I am going to make 500,000. And we start budgeting with 500. We change our children to where they go to school. We take a loan. We change our house. But do we really have the 500,000? That is the whole question. So should we still budget with the 100,000? Or should we budget using our wish list? That is where we are as a country. And that's the question we have to answer. Where should we base our budget on? Is it what we have already demonstrated we can collect, or is it this wish list? My view is that either budget should be based on what we collected in the previous financial year. If we collected 5 trillion, then we have to budget within 5 trillion. Because already, that one we have shown we can achieve. Then we can have a finance act that says we will collect 7 trillion. If we are able to collect 7 trillion, next financial year we will budget within 7 trillion. If we collect 6, we will budget within 6. But we should not budget against a wish list, because we don't know whether we will achieve it. And we leave everything to the discretion of a few people sitting at Treasury. Right. To just over budget, to be over ambitious in the Finance Act, then over budget, then prioritize the way they want. And that is where our problem is.
Now, Mr. Nick, do you share the same views? Is this budget, is it misplaced? Is it in the right place?
Well, I agree completely with Wakili, and probably to add flavor to whatever he's saying. If we have a 5 trillion, right, we work within our budget. And if these people are expert enough that we should move further and save, because we are a saving population, we should move further and save. And starting from a point of at least we have saved 10 bob. Right now, we know now this 10 bob we have saved as a country, where do we put it in terms of young people or programs that is lifting up according to them? You know, Martin, I will tell you, if you keenly zoom in the model called bottom-up, in the pyramid of hierarchy of economy, bottom is at the base, right? They're supposed to take care of first the common mwananchi, and to make sure that before, as they go up in the hierarchy of economy, as they build State House and renovate, first the common mwananchi has the basics. There is school, there is medication, there is food. But if the basic is lacking, then there's no bottom up you're implementing in this country. Right. We are kidding ourselves. We are living in a bloated budget, living in a bloated implemented process, living in another bloated consuming of the resources. Yet we cannot. I've told you, we have read almost 4 budgets which had bloated figures. Yet we cannot still account where we are in the matters of bottom up. We still feel the same pinch as if we started yesterday from 2022. I want to give you a very practical example, Martin. You are a young person as I am, struggling through your career. And most people try and imagine how they are paying taxes, and they think as if it's a big cloud. But how we pay taxes is through our way of living. For example, in the next 2 weeks, kuna kitu inaitwa end month. You need to pay rent. Yeah. The rent is based on the plot owner, and the plot owner has to also pay. He has to file returns every monthly before the 20th of the month. He has to return the returns of the house. Right. So he will make sure the returns that he's paying, you felt the pitch. That is number one. Number two, the most common thing that you need in your house is electricity. That anything you are living in Nairobi, you need electricity. And the average budget for a young person is 1,000 shillings. And the approximate of that 1,000 shillings, over time, I've done a simple analysis. The units move from 30 to 38 in that 1 month. But that 30 to 38 takes you a maximum period of day 1 to maybe day 15.
Sasa wanajaribu kupandisha bei ya kama sukari, unga, pampers, mafuta ya kupika, maziwa, vitu tunatumia kila siku. Lazima tutakuwa ni changamoto kwetu sisi kama mahasa wa nchi.
Ni mwanajua kali pia. Kitu yenye naweza sema, najaribu naomba serikali boost sector yetu. Ni sisi wale tuko chini na ni sisi wale walipa ushuru. At least wajaribu, hata kama ni license watushukishie. Tukate hiyo license, sio kila saa tushinde tukimbizana na kandu.
Daktari wanagoma kwa sababu gani? Hawana pesa ya kutosha, na madaktari wenye wanataka waajiriwe kazi permanent. Hiyo pesa nyinyi sasa mnachukua pesa, mnaenda kutengeneza nyumba yenye already yenye inaendelea, nyumba yenye watu wanaishi, ati mnaenda kupaka rangi. Hizo pesa mkichukua hata mlipe hao madaktari wetu. Mbona hatutakosa daktari katika hospitali? Ukuje upande wa education. Wakati wa Kibaki alikuja kuokota hata watoto kutoka kwa street wote wakaingia kwa kazi, wengine wakapelekwa NYS, wengine wenye walikuwa napita mtihani katika primary walikuwa naenda secondary. Hatukuwa na hizo shida. Sasa hizi hebu ingieni mtaani muone, kujeni vijijini muone vile watoto wamezingira.
All right, looking at those particular, citizens of Kenya, many of their concerns are revolving around, education, food, and health. Someone has just spoke there about health, and in the last past week, we've seen a father crying of his child being, he died in hospital in Kiambu County after, the doctors were on strike. So the son didn't get Now, what's your take on that particular matter in regards, the health has been allocated 137 billion, but yet, we have this protest. What's your take on that, Mr. Alex?
My take actually is, one, also to start by saying those issues that have been raised, food, health, they are all devolved functions. If you look at them under Schedule 4 of the Constitution. And having been devolved, then it boils back to what you were saying, that we are budgeting and funding the wrong person. If you, for instance, pushed that health budget to the county governments, right, you will increase the basket that county governments have, and they are the ones running the hospitals. So you find there is a budget for health, but that budget is in the national government. The national government is not running primary health care at the county government level. So we are funding the wrong entity. Agriculture as well is a devolved function. So all these monies, I submit, should be pushed to the county governments. We increase the county government's basket, then they are able to deliver health care, they are able to deliver agriculture, and exactly that is what these people are raising as Mwananchi, because
Right.
there is a deficiency at the county government where they are supposed to be getting the assistance from. So you find Mwananchi will go to a level 4 hospital, for instance,
Right.
in a county, find there are no drugs, then complain. But remembering that in the budget, there was a budget for health. But you see, the budget that went to health cannot enable that hospital to get drugs because it went to the national government and not to the county government. So at the end of the day, we should push all funds for devolved functions to county governments so that they are able to deliver what they are supposed to deliver to Mwananchi, then put them to account. But right now, the money has gone to the wrong principle.
Now, Mr. Alex, Mr. Nika, what's your take on matters health being allocated 197 billion as per the estimates of budget 2025-2026?
You know, I want to agree completely with Wakili,
Yeah.
because I'm assuming the child of the parent in Kiambu County who died,
Yeah.
they lacked a hospital bed. That's what I'm assuming, that's what happened. Probably the beds were overpopulated and there's no space. And one of the things that I could see probably is an oversight issue that needs to be handled very quickly. A decision needs to be made, because we sit here every year discussing about the issue of health, whether it's devolved or not. And the main issue comes in on one simple issue. One, who's the appointing authority of matters of doctors? Is it the county or is it the doctor?
Yeah.
And when you talk about appointing authority, of course you talk about a budget. Who pays the doctors or the medics? Is it the government or national, the county government or national government? In my opinion, if I'm asked, I will totally agree with Wakili. We need to reach a situation as a country whereby
Yeah.
counties can facilitate their own budget. They are given a mandate to fully function their own budget, so that when it comes to matters of responsibilities of whether we lack a hospital bed, we call out on the governor, not the president.
Right.
When it issues of whether there are hospital beds or whether there are drugs, we call out the governor, not the president. But why we are calling out the president is because he still holds the national basket, that the county government is still under his mercy. So that at the end of the day, the president has the autonomy to make decisions financially. You see, he's a CEO and he's a CFO on a technicality of this country. So when things are burning in this country, we fail to blame the county government, because the basket holder is the head of the state, who's the sitting president. In my view, if and only if, Wakili gave a very good analogy, according to our constitution, that the national government is supposed to be in charge only in policy making that regulate functioning of health at the county level.
Yeah.
So that responsibility starts with the governor. If I am suing the county, I'm starting from the governor, the hospital. But right now, it's even complicated. You start from the head of state, you go to the Ministry of Health, you are taken back to the county government, you're taken back to the hospital. By the time you're seeking justice, it is years.
Right.
And probably your child died over 20 years ago. Still no justice. That is the sad situation that we are in. And I want to imagine that we have budgeted. I couldn't get the figure right from your...
It's actually 137 billion estimates.
137 billion estimates.
Yeah.
We cannot simply, you know, I want you to picture this situation.
Yeah.
How many hospitals have you had in Turkana County? Functioning hospital. How many hospitals have you had? I'm taking you to the extreme ends.
Right. I will come to you. Your sound has a technical hitch.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Alex, we're taking a look at 4.23 trillion Kenya shillings in matters the budget of 2025-2026. Now, in this 4.23 trillion budget, there is a deficit of 876 billion. Now, Kenyans are the ones who are going to budget or rather to finance this particular budget. Is this going to burden Kenyans?
As long as there is a deficit, of course it's a burden.
Yeah.
And the problem is we are placing a burden we can already foresee to Kenyans. So that calls for, I don't know whether it's lack of expertise or it's a don't care attitude by the National Treasury. But I don't think we should burden Mwananchi on an issue that you can already foretell has a problem. Because as long as it's a deficit, then it is a burden to Mwananchi. Because how do you cover that deficit? Where do you get the funds to cover that deficit, that difference from? So my take is that that deficit is an unnecessary burden to Mwananchi.
Right, now Mr. Nick,
Yes.
we're taking a look at 4.23 trillion Kenya shillings in this particular budget of 2025-2026. It has a deficit of 876 billion Kenya shillings. Now, is this particular, and of course, Kenyans are the ones who are going to finance this particular budget. Is this budget going to, burden the Kenyans?
I will give you a very simple analogy.
Yeah.
When you are doing a simple budget like a food program budget for this office, there's one element you put as miscellaneous. The miscellaneous is part of the budget, and it is usually funded by the people who are getting the budget process getting implemented.
Right.
So in this case, it is factual that Kenyans are still going to budget this miscellaneous, as you put it. Now the problem comes in, Martin.
Yeah.
How are we going to audit miscellaneous? Who's going to take responsibility on the key factor of how this miscellaneous budget was used? Who will be put into question how this money that Mwananchi used from his pocket? At the same time, Mwananchi also has to find value to the miscellaneous budget. And in any budgeting process, miscellaneous always takes care of the people who are budgeting this process. But in our case, as a country, we don't see it.
Right.
So I'm being asked to remove money that I will still not find value, and I'm being asked again, I have to pay for it at the end of the day. So it's a very sad situation to look at, Martin, and thinking about it, what will make Kenyans not boil? We are living, a large percentage of human beings are very emotional. Today, our country is spiraling because of the emotions have been charged. People are angry, people are upset, people are tired, people are feeling frustration, especially and a very important bracket called the young people. That is where we are as a country, Martin.
Now, should the focus be on cutting, wasteful spending, rather than increasing taxes, because we have a lot of wasteful spending?
Exactly. That's where our focus should be. Actually, our focus should be reducing or eradicating wasteful spending and increasing funds for that will enable our citizens to industrialize and be self-sustainable.
Right.
If we do those two things, then by all means, we will be on the right trajectory. But currently, as we speak, we are not in the right trajectory because our budget has budgeted even for more wastage of resources, and we are more consumer we have a more consumer-based budget than an enabling budget. So our budget is on the wrong trajectory, and what you say is correct. We need to eradicate completely wastage and enable our citizen to be self-sustainable. Government should never be the doer. We should enable our citizens to be the doer.
Now, Mr. Alex, do you think should the focus be on cutting wasteful, spending rather than increasing the taxes. You remember that CS Mbadi, who's the CS for Treasury, said that in this budget, no more taxes. So if there's no more taxes, how do we come to these 4.23 trillion Kenya shillings? Of course, it has risen from the last, financial year.
I think the first wastage that we should go for, Martin, is the office of the president. One expenditure that I will want Mr. Mbadi to look at and cut it is, what exactly do the president advisors do? We have over 20 advisors who are on salary, who are paid by our taxpayer pocket. Over 20. And you see, it's just because we will want also to audit that process of these guys who are in that office sitting in as presidential advisors. How much do they earn of our money? Because they are still given a government car. The fuel is still given to move them around. They still also have an office budget. You get. That is number one cut. The second cut I will go after is, again, the office of the deputy president. Because, again, we have a bloated budget that is seemed to be operating that office. Yet we still cannot account for. Not, again, forgetting the office of the prime cabinet secretary. As we see it first, he's first the CS of Foreign Affairs, sitting in cabinet. Again, he also has, so he has a budget as a prime cabinet secretary, and also has a budget as a CS. We want to reflect on this as Kenyans. Where are we removing this money? Funding one person in two offices. A whole office that has been put up to facilitate Right Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. A whole office. As a CS, in terms of constitution, because his office is not constitutional as the second office, and as a prime cabinet secretary.
Right.
So you tell me how Kenyans are not going to feel a pinch. When you solve this crisis by cutting their budgets or removing completely one office, we're in a good place as a country. It's a starting point.
Right. At that note, although not yet law, if it passes, of course, after debates, what do you think will need to be okay for Kenyans in that particular budget?
What will not be okay is what Wakili had said.
Yeah.
Trying to implement the wish list. Because you remember, this budget is a wish list.
Yeah.
We still don't have this money. We're still going to work beyond our means to make sure that we pay for what we budget for. What will not be okay is everything that we have said here this afternoon, Martin.
Yeah.
That our priority seems to be upside down. That kids have to go to school, so there's money to renovate State House, but there's no money for capitation.
Yeah.
It is I don't know, our priorities, as Wakili is trying to say, because if we have money to renovate State House, definitely we don't have money for capitation.
Yeah.
If we have money to increase the travel expenditure, you see, just last year Kenyans were complaining that we have a flying president. It is factual.
Right.
There are a number of trips that he had done that were costing us taxpayers money. That right now, it's just because we are not putting so much focus on number of traveling that is happening locally. It's still our taxpayers' money. However, we don't have a problem with him spending all that money if there is a return of investment, as Wakili is saying.
Right.
That we put an element of, we put our tax on the table, it has done what we expected. Reduces a lot of heartaches, frustrations, and anger. across board.
Right. Now, Mr. Moshemi, from where you see it, although not yet law, if it passes, of course, after debates in Parliament, what do you think wouldn't be okay for Kenyans?
I want to agree
Yeah.
with Martin, my colleague here,
Yeah.
that at the end of the day, the greatest misfortune will be that we'll be implementing a wish list, something based on a finance act that I don't think we might be able to achieve, and there is no way to prioritize what is on the budget. The sad state of affairs is that the people we depend on, who are the parliament, from past experience, we think they have been hijacked by the executive, and so I think this is just a conveyor belt. I think they will approve it as is because they have turned themselves into a conveyor belt, which is a very sad state of affairs. If I was to propose a different scenario in Parliament, my view would be, because Parliament is basically meant to oversight executive. Mm-hmm. The majority leader and chairman of all these committees should come from the opposition party. That will be my view. So that you don't have an executive that has control over Parliament. Because right now, all these committees are chaired by the executive, by extension.
Sure.
The majority leader is the executive by extension. Then how do you oversight your boss? The leadership in Parliament should come from the opposition party. That way, at least there will be a bit of checks and balances. Yeah. If that can be pushed, then we will have a different scenario in this country, in my view.
Now, Mr. Alex, speaking of, the public participation, actually last week I did a story of a county where they were called for, rather, they were not called for public participation, but there was actually public participation going on. The soldier was not aware of the public participation. The residents, some few residents knew about the public participation. Of course, people have been told to send in the memorandas. Are they these public, public participations, their views actually, are they really looked at?
Martin, where to start it from? Yeah. I think you've you've seen a situation whereby this soldier is saying that there have been public participation, and the ideal situation is that is what's supposed to happen in our country, but if you ask the two of us, because these are great minds, where he lives and where I stay, if there's been any public committee that has been called, he will tell you it's not heard of any. So it's pretty much a laughable situation, but a very sad situation whereby we've reached a situation whereby we are starting to imagine that public participation has already occurred. Because it's by law a requirement that we are already imagining that we took part in that processes, it went to Parliament, and it's already a process that has been done. I don't know where exactly this public participation happened, because growing up, there used to be these foremen who used to blow whistles, calling people for public participation, probably from the chief, probably from the village elder.
Right.
At that point, public participation was public participation because everyone was involved. But in our case, I want you to imagine that we have 47 counties, right? And one nation. A budget that was supposed to go in all these 47 counties and all constituencies, because budgeting starts from at the lowest level. Ward goes to constituencies, then goes to county assemblies. Now the governor now comes to the National Assembly, throws in the Senate here and there. We are seeing a situation whereby, Martin, we are taken through a charade. So that we as Wakili was trying to put it early in the conversation, we missed the game ball. That we are told that public participation happened, but there is no documentation of public participation.
Right.
Did you see any documentation? Because legally, I know if there are public participation, there must be documents that people signed. There's a list of attendance that this and this were here. There are photos of public participation, and they are uploaded in the government website. If true, as he says, the CS, John Badi, that he has gone through public participation in all these 47 counties, then it will be very, very easy for him, for him to show us receipts that have been here, have been there, have done this, have listened to this number of people, have done here. But I know what he has done. He has done just a small trick as a politician that he is, and attended one public participation and extrapolated. You know, as you've seen, our budgeting will be soon be the matters of implementation, because it will be extrapolated, so that if there's a remainder of the money that is collected, it has to go. It has to get finished, so that we get to a debt level, so that again Kenyans are put in a place to pay. So in the same context, that he has probably done 1 or 2 public participation, and he has extrapolated to 47 counties without documentation processes. So I don't clearly see if there's any public participation that has been done in our country.
Now, Mr. Moshemi, from where, in your view, from where you see it, are these public participations really happening in the country? And if yes, are their views taken into consideration?
Let me paint a picture of now what is public participation in the country.
Yeah.
You see, at the end of the day, as a government, if you asked whether public participation happened, you need to demonstrate that, one, you made an advert somehow. So you called for people somehow, and the people were supposed to send their views to a particular place
somehow
within a particular duration of time. But now, for instance, if the feedback is supposed to come to an email, how do we know which feedback came to that email? Now, as citizens, how can we audit whether you took the views into consideration? If today we call them to we open that email jointly, you might find that most of the feedback that came was negative. But now we have no opportunity to see. I would prefer a situation where they set up an email for public participation and they give all of us a password. Whoever wants to view, you can just go and view and see what feedback is coming. Then that way we can be able to question on whether they took into consideration the feedback.
Right.
So we are left on one side, that as government we did what we needed to do. We called in for views. The views came through this email. We called for a meeting. Then during that meeting, of course, government will have their people who will come and air particular issues. The feedback went to a position where all of us can't tell. For instance, in a procurement situation, all of us will come and see the box being opened, so that we can tell who sent their procurement documents, who is qualified, who does not qualify. So as I leave the place, I will automatically know I did not qualify because a particular person beat me in the pit. Now, in this public participation, all of us are sending feedback to a particular email, but all of us don't have an opportunity to see what is in that email. So they can cook public participation. Right. They can cook the view of the public. They can say they took into consideration the view of the public. We have no way to question it. So it defeats the essence of public participation. It becomes a matter of ticking boxes. We called for a meeting. We made an advert. We provided an email. We provided a mechanism. But there is no way to audit that process.
Right.
There is no way to audit the feedback.
Right now, Mr. Nick, for the government to get these 4.23 trillion Kenya shillings, of course, there will be a gap in inequality. Having in mind that, we have to fund this budget Now, do you think, is this going to, widen the gap in inequality?
Well, I want to imagine what you mean by matters of inequality is matters of the social class.
Yeah, yeah.
And figuratively, when you look at the model of this government, it was supposed to not destroy the bridge between those at the top of the hierarchy and those at the bottom of the hierarchy. Because ideally, we cannot have an equal society. That will be an unfactual world to be. It will be you see the unfactual world to be, whereby we want to have everyone at the top of the table and no one at the bottom of the table. So the model that was made to function using the bottom up, it was supposed to let me say bridge down, reduce the gap, which was so wide.
Right.
But in our current state, because we cannot find equality, the only thing that we fight for as Kenyans is equity, so that we are living the same environment. Probably Wakili is driving a VX, I'm driving a Probox, but we are both comfortable in a manner. But in this situation, with this budget, it is designed in a way that only the minority majority will be comfortable. The people here at the bottom will still be crying. Because I told you earlier, the main ways of funding this budget, the top two, one, on the top of the list is taxes. The second on the top of the list is loaning processes. So Kenyans get tax and they pay the loan. So how are we going to bridge that gap if those processes are not solved? So it will be almost impossible to achieve equity in our country.
All right. I'm being told that CS Treasury, that is John Mbadi, is actually in Parliament, of course. Let's keep the conversation going. My name is Macharia. I'm signing off. Many thanks I was joined by Alexander Mushemi, who is the Laikipia County Attorney. Many thanks for, of course, making time to be with us this particular afternoon. And Nick Mwangi, who is the Secretary General for KAP Party. Many thanks for being part of the program.
You kept referring me to as Alex. I almost asked you, who's Alex? You have a brother-in-law called Alex. Or cousins. Thank you so much, Martin.
All right, let's keep the conversation going. Later on, Belinda William and Cynthia Nanjala will be coming up to keep this conversation going. My name is Martin Macharia, signing off. And as always, let's do this again when God says we do.
compared to the 8 million previously enrolled under the defunct National Hospital Insurance Fund, NHIF. This marks a major milestone, Mr. Speaker, in our health sector reforms and brings us closer to our goal of equitable, affordable, and accessible health care for all. Fifth, in fulfillment of the commitment to deepen home ownership and close the housing gap, the government has facilitated the construction of affordable housing units across the country. Since September 2022, 2,379 affordable housing units have been completed across 4 counties, with another 11,000 units in the last stages of completion. The units have been advertised for sale to the public through the Bomayangu platform. And in addition, there are 148,465 units under active construction across the remaining 43 counties. As part of the program, the government is also supporting the development of institutional housing for the uniformed services and students. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, these efforts have created over 250,000 direct and indirect jobs for Kenyans. In addition, over 11 billion has been ring-fenced for Juakali and MSMEs to support local fabrication of steel doors, windows, and other construction materials. Sixth, to drive digital transformation and inclusion, the government has expanded last-mile fiber optic connectivity to 13,590 kilometers in 2025, up from 8,900 kilometers in 2022, an increase of 53%. Two, established 285 digital hubs across the country, and also increased the number of digitized government services from 350 in 2022 to 20,985 in 2025 through integration with the e-citizen and mobile platforms, ensuring seamless access for all Kenyans. Seventh, to promote access to reliable and competitive energy, the government has expanded energy generation by installing an additional 167 megawatts of electricity from 3,076 megawatts in 2022 to 3,243 megawatts in 2025. This has enabled connection of 932,839 more customers to electricity. The system peak has increased from 2,149 megawatts of electricity in July 2022 to 2,316 megawatts of electricity in February 2025. The total number of customers connected to electricity has increased to 10 million in 2025 from 8.9 million in 2022. Eighth, to boost education and training outcomes in the country as a tool of creating equality in the society, the government has invested significant resources and implemented radical changes in the education sector. And these include resolving the uncertainty around the competency-based curriculum, CBC, launching of the Kenya Education Management Information System to consolidate all existing student registers from early childhood development to institutions of higher learning into a single centralized database. And three, rolling out of a new student-focused higher education focusing model with special emphasis for students from vulnerable families. Additionally, in order to improve the teacher-student ratio, the government has recruited 76,000 teachers, including junior secondary school teachers. Ninth, to enhance domestic and regional connectivity, boost rural productivity, improve urban informal settlements, and reduce urban congestion, this government has constructed an additional 1,574 kilometers of roads and 129 bridges from 2022 to April 30th, 2025. Further, the government has rehabilitated an additional 212 kilometers of roads and periodically maintained 126,177 kilometers of roads. 10, the government has also made significant progress in expanding social protection through the Inua Jamii Cash Transfer Program. From 2022 to 2025, the number of households with orphans and vulnerable children receiving support has increased by 65% to 428,421. Additionally, persons living with disabilities registered for support grew by 34% to 59,637. The number of senior citizens aged 70 years and above registered for social protection also rose by 66% to over 1.2 million. These efforts have provided stable incomes to the beneficiaries and reduced their dependency on relatives, enhancing their dignity and quality of life. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, notwithstanding these achievements, we are aware that a lot remains to be done in order to address the pressing challenges facing Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, in this year's budget-making process, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on how to address the economic challenges facing our country. In my various engagements at open barasas and in the media, Kenyans have been very resolute in voicing their concerns that include overtaxation and high cost of living, unemployment, need for protection of the poor and vulnerable, and more importantly, the need to reduce government expenditure and wastage of resources across the national and county governments. Mr. Speaker, I am alive to these domestic challenges facing Kenyans and the external factors such as geopolitical tensions and shifting global trade dynamics that lead to escalation of the cost of essential commodities in the country, requiring comprehensive responses by government. As you may recall, the social unrest precipitated by the Finance Bill of 2024 brought to the fore the importance of values and principles of governance as enshrined in our Constitution. In response and to win public trust, we have As you may recall, the social unrest precipitated by the Finance Bill of 2024 brought to the fore the importance of values and principles of governance as enshrined in our Constitution. In response and to win public trust, we have strengthened public participation in all policy formulation, including budget-making process. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I have actively engaged Kenyans in various social forums in an effort to promote inclusive dialogue on the challenges facing our economy. And as a result of these consultations, we have focused on the following broad areas. First, easing tax burden on Kenyans by increasing the pool of taxpayers and enhancing tax compliance. In this respect, the ongoing work on the digitization and automation at the Kenya Revenue Authority, in line with the Kenya's medium-term revenue strategy. Thus, all who are able shall henceforth contribute to financing the operations of government and development of our country. Second, to enhance liquidity in the economy and support small businesses, we have started the process of settling pending bills that have been validated, particularly those related to road construction, which has resulted in resumption of road construction projects across the country. Mr. Speaker, the pending bills verification committee will share their final report by the end of June 2025. This report will be analyzed and recommendations tabled in Cabinet for approval, after which we shall embark on the process of clearing the eligible bills, starting with those related to individuals, businesses, and the micro, small, and medium enterprises, majority of whom have borne the brunt of non-payment. Third, promotion of good governance on public finance matters. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans have expressed concerns about the public debt. Indeed, there is a perception of lack of transparency in the management of public debt. In this regard, I requested the Auditor General to conduct a comprehensive audit of public debt. This audit is currently ongoing, and once completed, the report will be shared with this House. Fourth, there has been public perception and concerns in the past that our budgets tend to be unrealistic. To address these concerns, we took a two-pronged approach. First, we adopted the zero-based budgeting, where every budget item has to be justified at the beginning of every financial year. This process was used in the preparation of the financial year 2025-2026 budget, which is the first time it is used, and which budget I submitted to this House on the 30th of April 2025. Second, in response to concerns on unrealistic revenue projections, we have reduced revenue projection to be in line with the trends. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, revenue projections in the financial year 2025-26 budget and over the medium term are consistent with the growth of the economy. Fifth, Mr. Speaker, in order to improve governance in the public procurement process, I launched the e-procurement system on April 7, 2025. And beginning of 1st July 2025, all procurement by ministries, departments, and agencies will be done through the e-procurement system without any exception. This will reduce the opaqueness and save government resources, estimated at 10% of procurable budgets. Sixth, we have taken deliberate efforts to enhance transparency and promote inclusive policy making and deepen public understanding of government economic priorities. We have not only intensified media engagement through the TV stations and radios, but have also engaged the public in open places like Jivanji Garden, Bunge la Wananchi, and Mombasa County, where we held a meeting at Swahili Port Amphitheatre. Similar engagements have also taken place in other locations in Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, and Nyeri, thereby providing valuable insights and lessons which have been taken into consideration while preparing this budget. Seventh, Mr. Speaker, in order to create additional jobs for the youth, the government has begun rolling out Climate Works, a nationwide program that will engage over 110,000 youth across all 47 counties. The program started last year in Nairobi's informal settlements and has been a great success. Now it is being expanded to the rest of the country. Climate Works is designed as a social support program that gives young people paid work to improve their communities. The youth will help build roads, plant trees, and clean up the environment in their neighborhoods. Thus, through this climate work, the government is not only providing a paycheck to help young people meet their immediate needs, but also offering financial support to help them develop themselves and their families. Indeed, the program enables them to save money and prepare for their next steps, including starting businesses, continuing their education, or finding long-term jobs. I encourage all our youth to register ahead of the registration deadline. Today, Mr. Speaker, having heard Kenyans loud and clear, we have accommodated their diverse concerns in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And in this regard, this budget provides highlights of the measures the government has taken to stimulate economic recovery, strengthen macroeconomic stability, and enhance resilience of our economy. Mr. Speaker, achieving these strategic objectives will require that we pull in the same direction. It is in this context that His Excellency the President has urged us to put our differences aside, build bridges, and focus on implementation of strategic interventions for a better Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, the theme for this year's budget is stimulating sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods, job creation, and business and industrial prosperity in line with better. That is bottom-up economic transformation agenda. That is the theme. Mr. Speaker, as we move forward in the implementation of the government's agenda, we are also conscious of the fiscal constraints that demand our collective attention and thoughtful action. One, rising demands for increased public spending, which could lead to either higher debt or the need to raise taxes, both of which require careful consideration and balanced decision-making given current public concerns. Two, we face constraints on account of public debt accumulation. Progressively, our debt carrying capacity has narrowed. This calls for prudence and discipline on how we manage and take on new debt. And finally, we face the challenges of mobilizing higher tax revenues, as we must balance the need for increased revenues with the need to keep the cost of doing business low to stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, these constraints are interlinked, and addressing them effectively requires strategic planning, fiscal discipline, and a commitment to long-term sustainability. In this regard, this budget will continue to implement a fiscal consolidation plan designed towards slowing down the growth of public debt while protecting service delivery to our citizens. Given the limited resources we have made tough choices by curtailing funding to lower priority areas. This has allowed us to redirect our scarce resources towards the better core pillars and enablers, accelerating outcomes for citizens while maintaining pro-poor spending in health, education, and vulnerable groups. Mr. Speaker, the rest of my statement will present the economic context around which this budget is prepared, policy priorities and structural reforms under better, the proposed resource allocations as well as revenue-raising measures that the government will implement in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. And therefore, let me start with the economic policy context. And I will first speak to the global context. Mr. Speaker, 2025-2026 budget has been prepared in the context of heightened uncertainty due to recent tariff wars and the intensification of geopolitical tensions, which continue to pose significant risks to global economies. In this regard and respect, global economic growth is expected to slow from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.8% in 2025, and finally to 3% in 2026. Now, let me come to the domestic economy. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, on the domestic front, the economy has remained resilient, as I stated earlier, recording an average growth rate of 5.2% for the years 2023 and 2024. This performance is higher than the global average of 3.3% and also higher than the sub-Saharan African region average of 3.8% over the same period. This strong growth reflects the impact of sound and deliberate policies, as well as the resilience of our well-diversified economy. These factors have enabled us to withstand significant domestic and external shocks while maintaining a steady path of progress. In 2024, the economy grew by 4.7%, supported by positive growth in all sectors except construction and mining. This growth was lower compared to 5.7% in 2023, mainly due to adverse effects of floods in the second quarter and the anti-finance bill protests in the third quarter of 2024 that disrupted economic activities. In fact, our economy closed down for about 3 months. Mr. Speaker, the government's policy interventions have strengthened the macroeconomic indicators as reflected in the following achievements. Number one, inflation rate has declined to 3.8% in May 2025 from a peak of 9.6% in October 2022. The prices of essential food items, including sugar, milk, maize flour, wheat flour, bread, and rice, among others, have eased. For example, the price of 2 kilograms of sifted maize flour has declined to 156.9 shillings in May 2025 from Kenya shillings 177.7 in October 2022. Similarly, cost of energy and power has also come down over the same period. Second, in response to the decline in inflation, the Central Bank of Kenya has gradually eased monetary policy, lowering the central bank rate from 13% in August 2024 to 9.75% in June 2025. With the easing of monetary policy stance, interest rates have been declining. For example, the 91-day treasury bills rates have declined from an average of 15.9% in May 2024 to 8.3% by May 2025. In addition, the average commercial bank lending rates that peaked at 17.2% in November 2024 have since declined to 15.7% in April 2025 and are expected to decline further. This decline has not only reduced the cost on government debt, but is also expected to stimulate lending by banks to the private sector and support economic activity. And third, foreign exchange market has remained stable, supported by a narrowing in the current account deficit and improved investor sentiment and confidence in our economy. The current account deficit narrowed to an all-time low at 1.3% of GDP in 2024 from 2.5% of GDP in 2023, supported by export of goods, resilient tourism, and remittance inflows, and a contraction in food imports. As a result, our foreign exchange reserves have increased to their highest levels and stood at US dollars 10.5 billion, which is equivalent to 4.7 months of import cover by 30th of May 2025, and continue to provide adequate cover and a buffer against any short-term shocks in the foreign exchange market. The exchange rate against the US dollar has also appreciated from 159.7 to the dollar in January 2024 to stabilize at Kenya shillings 129.3 shillings to the dollar by 30th of May 2025. Mr. Speaker, the economy is expected to sustain growth momentum in 2025 and 2026, with the growth projected at 5.3% per year. And Mr. Speaker, this growth outlook is premised on a stable macroeconomic environment over the medium term. To foster macroeconomic stability, the government will continue to uphold prudent monetary and fiscal policies, ensuring that our actions remain aligned with the evolving needs of the economy and of the Kenyan people. As part of the process, the government will work to ensure that inflation remains within the targeted range, maintain a competitive exchange rate to the dollar, and deliver stable interest rates. Fiscal policy stance over the medium term will continue to support the government's priority programs under better through a growth-oriented fiscal consolidation path. And as such, the fiscal deficit is projected to decline from 5.3% of GDP in the financial year 2023-24 to 2.7% of GDP in the financial year 2028-2029. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's economic outlook faces both external and domestic risks. Globally, trade tensions, financial market volatility, and geopolitical conflicts could reduce Kenya's exports, tourism, and remittances, as well as raise costs of essential commodities. In the domestic scene, extreme weather may impact agriculture, infrastructure, and food security. The government is monitoring these risks closely and will take necessary action and measures to safeguard macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, let me now expound on the policy, priorities, and structural reforms that the government is implementing to sustain economic growth and improve livelihood of Kenyans. The priorities are under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Mr. Speaker, as I have already affirmed earlier in my statement, government's initiatives under better over the last 2.5 years have resulted in significant successes, notwithstanding a challenging domestic and external landscape. Over the medium term, the government will consolidate the gains already realized to stimulate sustainable economic recovery for improved livelihoods. Towards this end, the government will continue to implement policies, programs, projects, and interventions geared towards 1. Bringing further down the cost of living, 2. Ensuring food security, 3. Creating jobs, 4. Expanding the tax base, 5. Improving foreign exchange balances, and finally, fostering inclusive growth. Priority will be given to attracting strategic investment across Better's 5 core pillars and their enablers, using a value chain approach to enhance production and add value and improve market access. This will be supported by a whole-of-government approach to service delivery. Mr. Speaker, the government will also implement the following interventions to support and accelerate economic recovery. First, continue to uphold macroeconomic stability and strengthen security to ensure a safe and supportive business environment. Second, accelerate the development of key infrastructure, including roads, railway, energy, and water systems to lower the cost of doing business and ease the movement of the people and goods. Third, boost investment in key economic sectors to drive broad-based sustainable growth by advancing agricultural transformation, strengthening manufacturing, promoting environmental conservation and climate change mitigation, revitalizing tourism, and ensuring sustainable land use and management. Fourth, strengthen human capital development by increasing investment in health, education, and targeted social safety nets for vulnerable populations to achieve both social and economic outcomes. Fifth, promote empowerment of youth, women, and persons living with disability through government-funded programs complemented by strategic partnerships with private sector organizations. Sixth, facilitate fiscal decentralization by allocating shareable revenues to county governments to bolster institutional capacity and improve service delivery. And finally and lastly, undertake policy, legal, and institutional reforms to improve efficiency and effectiveness in public service delivery. I want to now turn to a presentation on building resilience against climate change. Here, Mr. Speaker and honorable members, climate change, we all know, is now a global crisis. And Kenya remains vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, which pose both economic and fiscal risks. In response, the government is taking proactive steps to align with the global transition towards a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. To address the challenges and opportunities in climate finance and investment, the government has developed a number of frameworks, including Climate Finance Mobilization Strategy, National Policy Framework on Green Fiscal Incentives, Carbon Market Framework, as well as the National Green Taxonomy. To diversify our financing sources, address budget deficits, and fund social and environmental sustainability projects, the government is developing a sustainability-linked bond framework that will allow the issuance of a bond. We reaffirm our dedication to protecting our environment, safeguarding livelihoods, and building a climate-resilient Kenya for current and future generations. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we continue to experience challenges of disaster occurrences, mainly due to weather variability and climate change. These pose significant fiscal disruptions, while at the same time affecting lives and livelihoods of millions of Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, in order to have a financing framework to manage disaster risks, the government is finalizing the development of the Public Finance Management Disaster Risk Management Fund regulations of 2025. The regulations seek to establish a dedicated fund for addressing 4 cycles of disaster risk management, namely preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. Allow me now to turn to policy and legal institutional reforms. Mr. Speaker, recognizing that sustainable economic recovery depends on the timely implementation of effective policy, legal, and institutional reforms, the government is implementing the following interventions to enhance the business environment, improve efficiency in public service delivery, and bolster accountability and transparency in the management of public finances. Number 1, public procurement reforms. Mr. Speaker, to streamline public procurement, we developed the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Amendment Bill of 2024, which is currently in Parliament for enactment. The bill seeks to enhance transparency and accountability, strengthen the role of the regulator to enforce standards, compliance, and sanctions for non-compliant procuring entities, promote the use of local content, and align with international best practices. I urge the honorable members to fast-track this enactment. Its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to fully automate public procurement and asset disposal processes, I launched the end-to-end e-government procurement system in April 2025. The e-government procurement system is a complete departure from the manual processes, and will lead to increased bidder participation, enhanced efficiency in processing of procurement requests, and increased authenticity of procurement documents through integration with various government systems. Mr. Speaker, the rollout of the e-procurement system is scheduled for July 2025. In order to ensure effective use of this system, the National Treasury rolled out the training of end users from procuring entities in both the national and county governments on the management. We have since trained suppliers, and to date, 400 e-government procurement system end users comprising public finance management staff and suppliers from both the national and county governments have been trained in readiness for full rollout in July 2025. Next, I want to speak to restraining growth of public sector wage bill, which has been of serious concern. Mr. Speaker, the government continues to implement measures aimed at reducing the ratio of the government wage bill as a share of tax revenue, with a view to free much-needed resources for priority social and development spending. The government will implement the following initiatives to control the wage bill. First, the government will fully implement the unified human resource management system across all public sector entities by July 2025. This initiative is part of broader efforts to enhance public sector efficiency, aligning them to the allowances policy guidelines for the public service. Allow me now to turn to state corporations reforms. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, state corporations are a major source of fiscal risks to public finances due to management and operational inefficiencies. An assessment conducted by the National Treasury to determine viability of state corporations identified critical gaps and vulnerabilities. Mr. Speaker, to address the vulnerabilities, the Cabinet in January 2025 approved reforms to streamline state corporations and enhance governance and accountability of the corporations. The reforms target to address operational and financial inefficiencies, enhance service delivery, and reduce over-reliance on exchequer support by state corporations. The approved reforms include the following. First, merger of 42 state corporations into 20 entities to improve operational efficiency and eliminate redundancy, as some have duplicating and or overlapping mandates. Second, dissolution of 25 state corporations and their functions transferred back to their parent ministries or other state corporations. Third, restructuring 6 state corporations to align their mandates for improved performances. Fourth, declassification of 4 public funds currently categorized as state corporations and transferring their functions back to the relevant ministries. And fifth, declassification of 13 professional bodies currently categorized as state corporations to private entities with no exchequer budget. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance operational efficiency, improve governance and ownership of state corporations, the government developed the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill of 2024. The bill is part of broader efforts by the government to streamline public enterprises, reduce fiscal risks, and enhance service delivery to citizens. The bill is currently before this August House for consideration. Thank you. I urge honorable members to favorably consider the bill to enable its enactment. Mr. Speaker, in order to secure the uptake of cotton production, while also providing alternative linked supplies for local apparel manufacturers, the Cabinet approved the revival and commercialization of Rivertex East Africa Limited by onboarding non-equity strategic partners. Mr. Speaker, on sugar sector reforms, His Excellency the President reaffirmed his commitment during this year's Madaraka Day celebrations to ensure the prompt payment of sugarcane farmers. The government has also taken practical steps to deliver its promise to modernize the mills and transform these once struggling factories into productive, sustainable enterprises. Currently, 4 state-owned sugar factories, Chemelil's Sugar Company, Muhoroni's Sugar Company, Nzoia Sugar Company, and South Nyanza Sugar Company, which is also known as Sony, have been placed under competitive leasing arrangements. This initiative is expected to enhance efficiency, restore profitability, and protect the livelihoods of farmers. Let me now turn to pending bills. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to resolving the long-standing issues of pending bills dating back to 2005 as part of broader efforts to strengthen public financial management and restore confidence in government processes. In this respect, the Pending Bills Verification Committee that was appointed in September 2023 is currently finalizing its report for submission by end of this month. Since its inauguration, the committee received a total of 65,625 pending bills claims valued at over 571.6 billion. The committee has analyzed 57% of the bills received valued at 522 billion. The 57% is in terms of numbers. Out of this, a total of 229 billion has been recommended for settlement. Once the committee submits its report, we shall submit the recommendations to Cabinet for approval to settle the pending bills. Let me now speak to national assets and inventory management reforms. Mr. Speaker, in order to promote prudent management of public assets and liabilities, the National Treasury digitized assets in the assets and inventory management modules in the IFMIS for use by both national government and county governments. Already, 52 state departments have gone live on the IFMIS asset module and are at various stages of uploading their registers for 6 asset categories, namely land, building, motor vehicles, ICT equipment, office equipment, and furniture, and these currently categorized as state corporations to private entities with no exchequer budget. Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance the operational efficiency, improve governance and ownership of state corporations, the government developed the Government-Owned Enterprises Bill of 2024. The bill is part of broader efforts by the government to streamline public enterprises, reduce fiscal risks, and enhance service delivery to citizens. The bill is currently before this August House for consideration. Thank you. To accrual basis of accounting. On financial sector reforms, Mr. Speaker, the banking sector has remained stable and resilient with a strong asset base, which grew by 1.5% from 7.6 trillion in April 2024 to 7.7 trillion in April 2025. To anchor the banking sector to continue playing its role in Kenya's socio-economic transformation, various reforms have been implemented, which include, first, the Central Bank of Kenya lifted the moratorium on licensing of new commercial banks in Kenya in April 2025. This is expected to attract foreign direct investment in the sector, resulting in competition and consequently reduce lending rates. Second, to promote the greening of banking sector, Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued the Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy and the Climate Risk Disclosure Framework for implementation by the sector. The Kenya Green Finance Taxonomy is a tool to classify whether particular economic activities are green or environmentally sustainable and promote the transition to a low carbon economy. The Climate Risk Disclosure Framework is aimed at enabling banks to integrate climate-related risks into their governance, strategy, risk management, and disclosure frameworks. It is also intended to enable banks to leverage on business opportunities from efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And third, issuance of guidelines on global liquidity standards and leverage ratios. The Central Bank of Kenya in April 2025 issued guidelines on liquidity coverage ratio, net stable funding ratio, and leverage ratio for the banking sector. These guidelines will enhance the banking sector's liquidity and capital frameworks to promote greater financial stability and resilience, thereby ensuring that banks have the ability to withstand unexpected shocks, maintain stable funding, and manage their risk profiles effectively. Mr. Speaker, the Central Bank of Kenya, in collaboration with the National Treasury and other stakeholders, are developing the National Financial Inclusion Strategy for the period covering 2025 to 2028. The strategy provides a consolidated framework for advancing financial inclusion agenda to meet the needs of all Kenyans through deepening access and usage of financial services, enhancing quality of affordable financial products that meet consumer demands. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen digital finance in Kenya, the government will continue to implement the National Payment Strategy for the period 2022 to 2025 and fast-track finalization of a national policy on digital finance. In order to reform and modernize the national payment system, Central Bank of Kenya is doing the following. 1. Undertaking a comprehensive review of the national payment system legal and regulatory framework. 2. Implementing a fast payment system that seeks to address persistent challenges in interoperability, affordability, and the high cost of digital transaction. And 3rd, effective 1st July 2025, the Kenya Electronic Payment and Settlement System will transition to a 24/7 settlement capability. This will support round-the-clock trade, enable faster clearing of government payments, facilitate real-time business-to-business transactions, and provide greater flexibility for consumers and financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, following the grey listing of the Republic of Kenya by the Financial Action Task Force in February 2024, the government has continuously addressed the technical deficiencies identified in Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report, which was published by Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group in September 2024. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, one of the technical deficiencies identified in the Kenya's Mutual Evaluation Report was lack of a policy and regulatory framework to the virtual assets and virtual assets service providers. In order to regulate this sector, the government has developed the Virtual Asset Service Providers Bill 2025, which is currently before Parliament. Again, I urge honorable members to fast-track its enactment. On capital markets development, to further deepen the capital markets, the government continues to review the legal and regulatory framework to address emerging issues in the sector. In particular, the government overhauled the public officer regulations and collective investment schemes regulations to spur uptake of products while ensuring that investors are protected. The government has also approved new regulatory frameworks to support credit ratings and alternative investment funds, which have attracted a lot of interest from investors. Further, the government is in the process of reviewing the regulatory frameworks for licensing, margin trading, conduct of business for market intermediaries, and mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers. Once in place, these regulations will invigorate capital markets activity and make our capital markets more facilitative and efficient. Mr. Speaker, to diversify the government sources of financing, a Sukuk bond has been issued while other Sharia-compliant products are in the pipeline. The first Sukuk bond raised 3.2 billion, which has been effectively deployed in the affordable housing program and pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Act, Mr. Speaker, now I turn to the pension reforms. Mr. Speaker, in the Tax Laws Amendment Act 2024, we introduced a number of incentives aimed at increasing disposable income to our senior citizens once they retire. And I thank this Honorable House for passing this Tax Laws Amendment Bill in December. We, among others, increased tax deductible amount, removed tax on all retirement benefits, and introduced tax exemption on pension savings towards post-retirement medical schemes. Mr. Speaker, despite the reforms introduced in this sector, benefit adequacy remains a persistent challenge. Many retirees still find their pensions insufficient to meet their basic needs. And Mr. Speaker, the retirement benefits system predominantly covers the working population in the public and private sector to the exclusion of the unemployed population, who are majority in the informal sector. To address this, the National Treasury, in collaboration with key stakeholders, is implementing the National Retirement Benefits Policy. This policy outlines a clear, forward-looking strategy to address long-standing structural challenges, such as fragmented legal frameworks, exclusion of informal sector workers, limited medical cover for the elderly, weak portability mechanisms, and inadequate dispute resolution structures. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to fulfilling its obligations to retired public servants while ensuring that our pension system is modern, inclusive, efficient, and sustainable. In this respect, the government is undertaking reforms aimed at delivering faster, more transparent, and citizen-friendly pension services. Key among these reforms is the re-engineering of the pension management information system, which, together with the launch of a pension self-registration platform, will significantly improve data accuracy, enhance biometric verification, and reduce pension processing time from several months to less than 30 days. These reforms will also ensure real-time claims tracking, and integration with the national identification and payroll system, reducing errors and potential leakages. The re-engineered pension management system is planned for rollout on 1st of July 2025 and will transform pension administration by 1. Enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to submit pension claims online at source through integration with government human resource systems. 2. Allowing pensioners and beneficiaries to access services remotely and track the status of their claims in real time. And 3. Providing automated updates to clients on the progress of their claims through system-generated notifications. On insurance reforms, Mr. Speaker, to facilitate the growth of the insurance industry in Kenya, the government will speed up the approval of the National Insurance Policy and its implementation. The policy will guide the review of the Insurance Act, which has served its purpose, albeit with progressive amendments for the last 30 years. Mr. Speaker, the Insurance Regulatory Authority is undertaking focused training on livestock and crop insurance, targeting farmers and pastoralist communities. These efforts are aimed at improving understanding and access to agricultural insurance as a tool for mitigating climate-related risks and protecting livelihoods of farmers and pastoralist communities. The authority is also conducting a comprehensive money laundering and terrorist financing risk assessment on the vulnerability of the insurance industry. This will aid in the identification of areas of improvement so as to strengthen the supervisory framework. On reforms under the education sector, Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury is committed to upholding the right to education, including free and compulsory basic education as guaranteed under Article 53B of the Constitution of Kenya. While we are cognizant that examinations must be conducted as scheduled later this year, there is need to undertake a critical evaluation of the costing of examination, assess the sustainability of the program in view of the prevailing fiscal constraints, and explore optimal options for delivering national examinations in order to ensure economy and value for money in public spending. Mr. Speaker, a key consideration is the merits of public funding of examination fees for all primary and secondary school candidates, including those from well-off households, as opposed to targeting the vulnerable students in our schools. We should also explore options of making the exercise of delivering national examinations simple and affordable without compromising the credibility of the exercise. To this end, the National Treasury is in consultations with the Ministry of Education on how best to achieve this at a minimal cost possible, including evaluating possible cost-sharing mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to ensuring access to quality education for all children. In this regard, I assure the public and the 2025 examination candidates of our commitment to provide adequate funding for 2025 national examinations. On the fiscal policy framework, Mr. Speaker, the implementation of 2024-2025 budget has faced notable challenges primarily following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024. Its withdrawal, alongside the associated public demonstrations, adversely affected economic activity and disrupted business operations across the country, compounding the fiscal pressures facing the government already. In response, the government undertook a revision of the fiscal framework through Supplementary Estimate Number 1 in August 2024. This revision reflected a lower revenue base following the preliminary outcomes of financial year 2023-24, while also addressing immediate cash flow constraints. These adjustments were critical to ensuring the continuity of public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the mid-year economic disruptions, the budget execution has been further constrained by shortfalls in revenue and emerging expenditure pressures. Notably, the implementation of the collective bargaining agreements and funding requirements under the new university education financing model have placed significant demands on the available fiscal space. These challenges have led to cash flow pressures and a buildup of pending obligations, necessitating careful fiscal management and reprioritization. To address these evolving dynamics, the government prepared supplementary budget estimates to accommodate revenue shortfalls experienced during the current fiscal year and accommodated expenditure pressures. On domestic revenue mobilization, Mr. Speaker, in order to support our economic agenda and sustain key government programs, the government continues to implement a balanced mix of tax policy and administrative measures aimed at significantly boosting revenue collection. As part of the process, the government is focused on broadening the tax base while reducing the burden of compliance. In this regard, we have prioritized sectors such as the digital economy, agribusiness, and small and medium enterprises in tax education and outreach programs. In addition, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority continues to embrace modern technology to streamline tax processes, facilitate trade, and enhance voluntary compliance. A key milestone in this journey is the launch of Gava Connect, an open application programming interface platform that enables Kenyan developers to build homegrown solutions for efficient access to tax services. This program enhances service delivery, improves transparency, and strengthens our ability to detect tax evasion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority has also introduced several digital tools to simplify compliance and boost operational efficiency. One is what we call auto-populated VAT returns for seamless, accurate tax filing. Two, simplified pay returns, accessible via mobile, web, and application program interface. Three, electronic rental income tax system that has enabled transparent rental income declarations. And four, forecourt electronic tax invoice management system integration in the petroleum sector, connecting fuel dispensers to point-of-sale terminals. This enables real-time transmission of sales data to electronic tax invoice management system, simplifying compliance and ensuring greater transparency in fuel transactions. Mr. Speaker, these solutions are more than just tech updates. They are the drivers of economic empowerment and accountability. Indeed, by simplifying tax procedures, developing user-friendly digital platforms, and providing on-the-ground support, Kenya Revenue Authority is nurturing a fair and inclusive tax culture, one that enables businesses to thrive while meeting their obligations. Mr. Speaker, building on the progress made, our focus in the financial year 2025-26 and over the medium term will be to strengthen domestic resource mobilization through the following key initiatives. First, continue with the implementation of the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy to provide a consistent and predictable framework for tax administration and policy formulation. Second, continue with the automation of tax administration processes to improve the overall efficiency of the tax system. And third, enhancing non-tax revenue collection by enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to generate income through the services they provide to the public. Mr. Speaker, as part of our broader fiscal reform agenda, the government is undertaking targeted tax administrative reforms aimed at strengthening our revenue base and promoting inclusive economic growth. These reforms will focus on three key objectives. First, reducing tax expenditures. Mr. Speaker, tax expenditures stood at 3.38% of GDP in 2023 to unlock additional revenue for national government. We must reduce that tax expenditure. Second, expanding the tax base and enhancing compliance, in line with the goals set out in the medium-term revenue strategy. And third, streamlining the tax structure to encourage domestic production, attract investment, and stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak to improving efficiency of public expenditure. Here, Mr. Speaker, in our continued effort to ensure prudent fiscal management, the government will sustain and deepen measures aimed at strengthening expenditure control and enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending. To this end, the government will implement a series of targeted actions, which include: 1, utilization of the launched end-to-end procurement system to maximize value for money, enhance efficiency and transparency in public procurement processes. 2, rolling out of a human resource management system across all national government ministries and departments, as well as county government, to support better management of the public wage bill. 3, scaling up the use of the public-private partnerships framework for commercially viable projects to attract private sector participation in public service delivery, what we call PPP. 4, improving the public service pension administration through rolling out the pension management information system. And 5, fast-tracking governance reforms in state corporations to strengthen accountability, efficiency, and financial sustainability. I want to now turn to revenue projections. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, based on the outlined policy measures and structural reforms, total revenue collections, including appropriation in aid, for the financial year 2025-26 budget is projected to be at 3,321.8 billion, equivalent to 17.2% of GDP. Of this amount, ordinary revenue is projected at Kenya shillings 2,754.7 billion, which is equivalent to 14.3% of GDP. And ministerial appropriation in aid, or if you like, non-tax revenue, is projected at 567 billion shillings. Grants are projected at 46.9 billion, or 0.2% of the GDP. Having talked about revenue projections, let me now turn to expenditure projections. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure in the financial year 2025-2026 budget is projected at 4,291.9 billion, equivalent to 22.3% of GDP. And of this, recurrent expenditures will amount to 3,134.4 billion, equivalent to 16.3% of GDP. And development expenditures, including allocations to domestic and foreign finance projects, contingency fund, and equalization fund, will amount to 693.2 billion, equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Total allocation to county governments is projected at 474.9 billion, of which equitable share is 405.1 billion. Fiscal deficit and financing. Mr. Speaker, the resultant fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected at 923.2 billion, which is equivalent to 4.8% of GDP, down from the estimated 997.5 billion, or 5.7% of GDP in financial year 2024-25. The fiscal deficit for the financial year 25-26 budget will be financed by net external borrowing of 287.7 billion, equivalent to 1.5% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 635.5 billion, which is equivalent to 3.3% of GDP. Public debt management. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's public debt is projected to remain with these sustainable levels over the medium term. In present value terms, the debt to GDP is projected to progressively decline from 63% in 2024 towards the debt anchor of 55% or minus 5% of GDP plus or minus 5% of GDP for 2028. To support the projected decline in debt levels, the National Treasury will continue implementing various reforms as guided by the medium-term debt management strategy, including liability management operations, continue pursuing use of concessional loans from multilateral, bilateral, and limited commercial sources such as international bond issuances. Additionally, reforms targeted to support domestic market development will eventually reduce the cost of public debt while sustaining fiscal consolidation efforts to ensure debt remains within sustainable levels. Further, the government will explore emerging funding instruments such as debt swaps, diaspora bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, and environmental, social, and governance debt instruments to fund budget deficit and manage public debt. This strategic approach will not only diversify our financing options, but also strengthen international partnerships and promote sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government is keen on sustaining transparency and improving efficiency on public debt service. To this end, the National Treasury is in the process of integrating the Commonwealth Meridian Debt Management System with the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, and the core banking systems of Central Bank of Kenya. On public-private partnerships framework, Mr. Speaker, the government continues to strengthen the role of public-private partnerships in financing our development agenda. Currently, there are 32 PPP projects at various stages which are targeted to mobilize 70 billion shillings in the financial year 2025-2026 through private investments in priority sectors, including energy, water, housing, health, and transport. So, Mr. Speaker, to enhance transparency and accountability at all stages of project life cycle while implementing PPP, I recently issued a circular on mandatory disclosure requirements for all privately initiated proposals. This measure is part of our broader effort to strengthen the integrity of the PPP program and to ensure that private sector participation in public projects fosters public trust. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury in May 2025 received the final report of the Committee of Experts on leveraging local financial markets for investment into public-private partnerships and implementation. The committee recommended the establishment and operationalization of PPP Implementation Trust Fund as the central mechanism for enhancing private sector participation in PPPs, particularly through institutional and retail entities. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the PPP regulations under consideration by Parliament will enhance clarity around PPP processes, thereby enhancing efficiency and project delivery. This will also unlock a pipeline of county-level specific PPP projects in partnership with development partners. In strengthening public finance management reforms, number one is migration to accrual accounting. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen management of public resources, all government ministries, departments, and agencies adopted accrual accounting as of 1st July 2024. The first accrual-based financial statements are expected for the financial year ending 30th June 2025, which is a few days away. The accrual accounting will enable the government to account for all assets and liabilities, including all government assets. Second, Treasury single account. Mr. Speaker, to enhance cash management, the migration of ministries, departments, and agencies to the Treasury single account is progressing well. The Central Bank of Kenya is scheduled to go live with its T24 system upgrade in July 2025. This upgraded platform will support the implementation of Treasury single account core functionalities and facilitate the National Treasury to roll out the key elements of the Treasury single account system. Concurrently, the National Treasury is on track to onboard county governments in 2026. The final phase will involve integrating all remaining national government entities into the Treasury single account by financial year 26-27. Third, zero-based budgeting. Mr. Speaker, to reorient the budgeting and expenditure framework, the government adopted the zero-based budgeting approach while finalizing the financial year 25-26 budget. To implement this approach, the National Treasury developed a budget costing tool that was integrated into the IFMIS budget module for the national government. The zero-based budgeting approach compels all ministries, departments, and agencies to justify expenditures from scratch, thus ensuring resources are allocated to high-impact activities. It promotes transparency, efficiency, by requiring clear justification and critical assessment of spending. Mr. Speaker, I know this statement is long. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, you know Kenya is not a small economy. We are number 6 in Africa. And we have jumped over Ethiopia. So you can't have a 3-pager statement for an economy as big as Kenya.
Gone without apology. Gone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
So far, so good.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm now turning to resource allocation so that honorable members can appreciate, and the Kenyan people, where we have allocated the limited resources that we have. Mr. Speaker, now let me highlight the government spending priorities for financial year 25-26. Expenditures for the financial year 25-26 will consolidate the gains realized under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, with special focus placed on promoting investment in core pillars and their enablers through a value chain approach. Number 1, under agricultural transformation and inclusive growth, which is the first pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to transform the agriculture sector by increasing productivity in key value chains such as fisheries and aquaculture, horticulture, food crops, livestock and rangeland development. The government will scale up support to farmers through input financing, subsidies, and extension services. This will move the country from food deficit to food surplus, reduce reliance on food imports, and revamp export crops. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, I have proposed an allocation of 47.6 billion for various programs under this sector, despite the fact that agriculture is largely devolved. This includes 8 billion for the fertilizer subsidy program, 10.2 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 800 million for small-scale irrigation and value addition project, 1.2 billion for food security and crop diversification project, and 5.8 billion for the food systems resilience project. Mr. Speaker, to promote livestock production, I have proposed Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement of pastoral economies programs. 1.6 million Kenya shillings for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program, and 280 million for the Livestock Value Chain Support Project. I have also proposed Kenya shillings 340 million for the development leather industrial park at Kenani. Mr. Speaker, to support the growth of blue economy, I have proposed a total of 8.2 billion to the blue economy and fisheries subsector. This includes 2.3 billion for aquaculture business development project, 2.4 billion to the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Socio-Economic Development Project, and 500 million for the Kabonyo Fisheries and Aquaculture Training Center. Mr. Speaker, to raise agricultural productivity and enhance resilience to climate change risks in targeted smallholder farming and pastoral communities, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 318 million towards an ending drought emergencies project, and 1.3 billion to resilience for food and the nutrition security program in Horn of Africa project. Mr. Speaker, the government is also committed to land reforms to address historical inequalities, promote equitable access, and ensure sustainable land management. To this end, I have proposed a sum of 3.8 billion for settlement of the landless. I have also proposed 1.1 billion for processing and registration of title deeds, another 712 million for digitization of land registries, another 200 million for georeferencing of land parcels, and 220 million for construction of land registries to safeguard legitimacy of land ownership. The next pillar is transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprises economy. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the challenge of accessing affordable credit by most micro, small, and medium enterprises, and Kenyans at the bottom of the pyramid. To address this challenge, I have proposed an additional allocation of 300 million to the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, to scale up access to credit for households and MSMEs. I have also proposed an additional 308 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, 550 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship Project, and 1.3 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility. Under housing and settlement, which is the other pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to facilitating the construction of decent, safe, and affordable houses for Kenyans. Through the affordable housing program, the government is creating jobs for the youth, directly in the construction sector and indirectly through the production and supply of building products. To continue supporting this initiative, I have proposed an allocation of 128.3 billion for the housing, urban development, and public works subsector. This includes 13.4 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, 64.5 billion for construction of affordable housing units, 10.5 billion for construction of social housing units, and 16.5 billion for social and fiscal infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the housing, urban development, and public works interventions include 7.2 billion shillings for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, 3.5 billion for the construction of housing units for the National Police and the Kenya Prison, 500 million for building climate resilience of the Urban Poor Program, 184 million for construction of footbridges, and 454 million targeted to support construction of county headquarters. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the safety of Kenyans through compliance with building codes and standards, as well as other industry regulations, I have proposed an allocation of 2.6 billion for the regulation and development of the construction industry. I am aware members are aware, I know members are aware of the challenges we have had where collapsed buildings kill many Kenyans as a result of carelessness of various developers. Let me turn to universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, access to quality and affordable health care through the universal health coverage program is central to this government. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 138.1 billion, up from 123 billion in the current year's budget, to the health sector to support various activities and programs. This includes 6.2 billion for universal health coverage, coordination and management, 13.1 billion for primary health care, and that is up from 7.1 billion in the current year, and 430 million to provide medical cover for the orphans, elderly, and disabled persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, to lower cases of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, and enhance vaccines and immunization program in the country, I have proposed 17.3 billion for the Global Fund and Kenya shillings 4.6 billion for vaccines and immunization programs, respectively. Mr. Speaker, to enhance early diagnosis and management of cancer and reduce the burden of treatment of chronic and critical illnesses among Kenyans, I have proposed an allocation of 8 billion to the Emergencies, Chronic and Critical Illnesses Fund to be managed by SHA, and this has moved from 5 billion shillings in the current budget. 1 billion for construction of a cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, 100 million to strengthen cancer management in Kenyatta National Hospital, and 100 million for expansion of comprehensive cancer treatment at Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. Mr. Speaker, to improve health service delivery, I have also proposed a sum of 42.4 billion for our referral hospitals, including Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hospital, Mwai Kibaki Teaching and Referral Hospital in Othaya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kisumu, and Macharia National Teaching and Referral Hospital. Other locations include Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for the construction of Kenyatta National Hospital, Burns and Pediatrics Center. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed 5.2 billion for Kenya Medical Supplies Agency to recapitalize it, 2.7 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, 500 million for procurement of family planning and reproductive health commodities, and 300 million for procurement of equipment at the National Blood Transfusion Services. Further, to strengthen the capacity of medical personnel, I have also proposed an allocation of 4.3 billion for medical interns, 3.2 billion for community health promoters, 303 million for training of health personnel, and 8.9 billion for the Kenya Medical Training Centers, KMTCs. On digital superhighway and creative economy, which is the other pillar of the better principle, the government continues to invest in digital superhighway to improve ICT infrastructure and expand internet access nationwide. The creative industry is a significant source of employment, particularly for the youth, and has the potential to address high unemployment rates through promotion of music, theater, graphic design, digital animation, fashion and craft, among others. Mr. Speaker, to support growth in the digital superhighway, I have proposed an allocation of 12.7 billion to fund initiatives in the information, communication technology sector. Specifically, this proposed allocation includes 2.3 billion shillings for the construction of Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology at Konza Technopolis, 3.7 billion for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, and 333.2 million for government shared services, 382 million for the digital superhighway, 689 million for the establishment of digital hubs, and 750 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of national optic fiber backbone infrastructure. In order to fast-track the development of the Konza Technopolis city, I have proposed an allocation of 3.1 billion for Konza data center and smart city facilities. The government is also committed to enhance transparency, accountability, and efficiency in public procurement. I have in this regard proposed an allocation of 700 million for rolling out the implementation of the electronic government procurement system, what we call EGP or EGP, EG procurement. Other key allocations to critical sectors supporting better include the following: investing in critical infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to invest in transportation networks, including roads, railways, and air travel, to reduce travel time and logistic costs, making markets more accessible and facilitating the movement of goods and people. Towards this end, I have proposed an allocation of 217.3 billion for development of roads across the country. This includes 30 billion to support construction of new roads and bridges, 70.8 billion for rehabilitation of roads, because we have so many long, the length of roads is so long that we have to maintain them and rehabilitate. And 115.6 billion for road maintenance. Actually, this 115 billion is more than the 85 million that we have in the current budget by 30 billion for maintenance of our roads. Mr. Speaker, to expand railway transport and its infrastructure, I have proposed an allocation of 38 billion shillings. I have also proposed an allocation of 450 million for the Kenya ferry ramp in Mombasa, 331 million for Nairobi bus rapid transport project, and 298.7 million for promotion of e-mobility projects. To facilitate movement of goods and people in our inland waters, I have also proposed an additional 110.4 million for acquisition of ferries for Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, to scale up production of reliable and affordable energy, I have also proposed an allocation of 62.8 billion to cater for key energy interventions. This includes 31.6 billion for the national grid system, 16.3 billion for rural electrification, 11.6 billion for development of geothermal energy, 2.1 billion for alternative energy technologies, and 743 million for development of nuclear energy. Let me now talk about improving education outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the education sector plays a vital role in economic development by enhancing human capital, driving innovation, and improving productivity. To this end, the government continues to invest in education to raise learning outcomes and ensure equal opportunities for all. Mr. Speaker, I have proposed a total allocation of 702.7 billion to the education sector, which is almost 28% of our entire budget. This will include an allocation of 387.2 billion to the Teacher Service Commission. The allocation for TSC will include 7.2 billion for recruitment of intern teachers and 980 for capacity building of teachers on competence-based education curriculum. Further, I have proposed an allocation of 7 billion for free primary education, 28.9 billion for junior secondary school capitation, and 51.9 billion for free day secondary education. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 5.9 billion for administering the national examinations, 3 billion for the school feeding program, and 7.2 billion for the recruitment of intern teachers. I think that one I'd already mentioned, that's a repeat, and 4 billion for the technical, vocational, educational training and entrepreneurship project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance infrastructure development and provide a safe learning environment in our schools, I have proposed an allocation of 1.7 billion for primary and secondary schools infrastructure, and 1.4 billion for construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers. In addition, I have proposed 13.3 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program, and 2.3 billion for the Kenya Secondary School Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the education sector include 993 million for research, science, technology, and innovation, 41.5 billion to the Higher Education Loans Board for provision of loans to university and TVET students, and this has increased from 35 billion to 41.5 billion for health. Another 16.9 billion for scholarship for university students, and 7.7 billion capitation and scholarship for TVET students. In supporting manufacturing for job creation, Mr. Speaker, to continue promoting local industries, I have proposed an allocation of 18 billion under various implementing ministries, departments, and agencies. Out of this, 4.5 billion will support establishment of county integrated agro-industrial parks in various counties. 2.8 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery, what we call SAFER project. 602 million for a development of Athi River Textile Hub. 705 million for establishment of flagship export processing zones hubs. 504 million for development of special economic zone textile park in Naivasha. And 798 million for Kenya jobs and economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, in order to revitalize and maximize the benefits from our cash crops, I have proposed 2 billion for coffee cherry revolving fund and another 2 billion for coffee debt waivers. This is up from the 3 billion that was allocated to this subsector in the last financial year's budget. Another 1.5 billion for sugar sector reforms, and 120 million for modernization and revitalization of cotton ginneries, and 245 million for horticultural produce compliance enhancement project. Mr. Speaker, to support local production and processing of edible oils, I have proposed an allocation of 300 million for the National Edible Oil Crops Promotion Project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance milk processing, I have proposed an allocation of 400 million for excess milk mop-up and 150 million for modernization of milk processing factories in Runyenjes and Narok. Mr. Speaker, to equip our youth with essential training and internship opportunities in trade and industry, I have proposed an allocation of 330 million for the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project. Another 500 million for the construction of industrial research laboratories, and 109 million for constituency industrial development centers. Now let me speak to improving security. Mr. Speaker, a stable and secure environment fosters investment, trade, and overall economic growth. In this regard, I have proposed an allocation of 202.3 billion for defense, another 125.7 billion for the National Police Service, and 51.4 billion for the National Intelligence Service, another 32.5 billion for internal security and national administration, and 38.1 billion for prison services. I have also proposed an additional allocation of 10 billion to cater for leasing of police motor vehicles and 3.6 billion for police modernization program. Mr. Speaker, to combat crime and enhance administration of justice, I have proposed 1.2 billion for construction and modernization of national forensic facilities. Now, let me turn to protecting the vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, social protection services are crucial for building more equitable and resilient societies by reducing poverty, inequality, and vulnerability, as well as promoting economic growth and social cohesion. I have in this regard proposed an allocation of 41.4 billion in this budget to protect the vulnerable members of our society and promote affirmative action. This is increasing from 33 billion in the current financial year's budget. Out of this allocation, 25.1 billion will cater for cash transfers to the elderly persons. And again, this has moved from 18 billion, so it has increased by 7 billion. 8.9 billion for cash transfers to orphans and vulnerable children. Again, that's a jump of 1 billion more. And 1.5 billion for cash transfers to persons living with disability. Again, this has been increased from 1.19 billion. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations also includes 3.9 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net program, 450 million for the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya. In addition, there is 600 million which will go to the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, 100 million for the Presidential Bursary for Orphans, 180 million for the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and 90 million for the National Albinism Support Program, and finally, 90 million for the National Autism Support Program. On equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, unemployment remains one of the most persistent and challenging issues facing the country today. The challenge is not only about job creation, but also bringing the critical gap between education and employment and developing relevant skills for the modern economy. In order to empower the youth and support businesses owned by youth and women and to promote development in the constituencies, I have proposed 105.6 billion for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion, I have proposed 105.6 billion, not million, for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion for the National Youth Service, NYS, 3.6 billion to National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement, what is famously known as NYOTA, and Kenya shillings 318 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. In addition, I have proposed 990 million for film development services. Mr. Speaker, to further empower our women and girls, I have proposed 353 million for the Women Enterprise Fund, 940 million for provision of sanitary towels to school-going girls, 254 million for strengthening prevention and response to gender-based violence in Kenya, 110 million for eradication of female genital mutilation, and 4 billion for the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, otherwise known as NGAF. Mr. Speaker, to promote regional equity, reduce poverty, and enhance social development across the country, I have proposed 58.8 billion for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, 9.6 billion for the Equalization Fund to finance programs in identified marginal areas or marginalized areas, and another 15.9 billion for the Kenya Devolution Support Program number 2. To stimulate tourism growth, sports, culture, recreational and arts, Mr. Speaker, in order to harness national pride, empower our youth and position Kenya as a regional beacon of talent and heritage, I have proposed an allocation of 29.7 billion to support sports, culture and recreation as well as tourism. This proposed allocation includes 13.5 billion for the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund, 2.3 billion to establish an automation and digitization system for the sports registrar, 241 million for the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya to make Kenya remain competitive in the athletics and other sports, 402 million for Sports Kenya, 245 million for the Kenya Academy of Sports, 8.2 billion for the Tourism Fund, and 4.2 4.8 billion for tourism promotion fund. On environmental protection, water and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, to safeguard natural ecosystems, ensure sustainable water use, and tackle the impact of climate change, I have proposed an allocation of 10.7 billion for forest resources conservation and management, 1.6 billion for forest research and development, 3.7 billion for environment management and protection, 11.5 billion for the Kenya Financing Locally Led Climate Action Project, which is known as FLOCA, 1.6 billion for meteorological service, and 13.2 billion for wildlife security, conservation and management. Another 953 million for wildlife research and development. In addition, I have also proposed 1.1 billion for human wildlife conflict compensation and 950 million for wildlife insurance. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 26.8 billion for water and sewerage infrastructure development. Out of this, 16.5 billion for water resources management and 1.9 billion for water storage and flood control. In addition, I have also proposed 15 billion for irrigation and land reclamation and 266 million for water harvesting and storage for irrigation. In order to improve governance and sustaining the fight against corruption, Mr. Speaker, to enhance good governance, intensify the fight against corruption, and entrench integrity and accountability in public service delivery, I have proposed Kenya shillings 4.5 billion for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 4.5 billion for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, 5.3 billion to the State Law Office, and 8.7 billion for the Office of the Auditor General. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to enhance the oversight and legislative role of Parliament, I propose an allocation of 48 billion for Parliament. To enable administration of justice, I also propose an allocation of 27.8 billion for the judiciary. Now let me turn to allocation to county governments. Mr. Speaker, to support devolution, county governments will receive 405.1 billion in the financial year 2025-2026 as an equitable share of revenue raised nationally, an increase of 17.6 billion from Kenya shillings 387.4 billion in financial year 24-25. The 405.1 billion represents 25.8% of the most recently audited revenues for financial year 2020-2021, way higher than the minimum of 15% prescribed in Article 203(2) of the Constitution. In order to ensure food and nutrition security, infrastructure development, improved water and sanitation systems, among others, county governments will receive an additional 69.8 billion as additional allocations. Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, to support implementation projects in the marginalized areas, 7.85 billion has been proposed as an allocation to the Equalization Fund in the financial year 2025-2026, and an additional 2.74 billion to settle outstanding arrears owed to the fund. Mr. Speaker, now allow me to speak to measures to enhance county government's own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, the own source revenue policy recommended the development of a national framework legislation to regulate the introduction of taxes, fees, and charges by county governments. Consequently, the National Treasury and other stakeholders developed the County Government Revenue Raising Process Bill, which is currently before Parliament for consideration. Again, I urge the Honourable House to consider the bill and prioritize its enactment. Mr. Speaker, now let me turn to taxation measures. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to tax policy measures supporting the financial year 2025-2026. These measures include proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2025, as well as the customs duty measures agreed upon by the East African Community Ministers for Finance during the East African Community pre-budget meeting held in May this year, which I personally attended. These measures are set to take effect from 1st July 2025. Mr. Speaker, The freedoms we enjoy in this country have not come easy. In the last couple of years, Kenyans have spoken clearly and loudly on the desired direction in development of policy and governance of taxation. In 2023, the minority side in Parliament, supported by the efforts of the then ODM chairman, protested against the Finance Act of 2023. Last year, Mr. Speaker, some provisions in the Finance Bill 2024 triggered protests across the country. These actions in the 2 years regrettably resulted in the loss of lives and destruction of property and adversely impacted economic lives of many. In the remembrance of our fellow Kenyans who lost their most precious lives during these protests, allow me, Mr. Speaker, that we observe a minute of silence in their remembrance.
Will you be upstanding?
May their souls continue resting in eternal peace. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, no life should be lost and no property should be destroyed again. The message from Kenyans was clear. Since I took office at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, I assured Kenyans that we shall strive to reduce tax burden. In this respect, the Finance Bill of 2025 has neither proposed new taxes nor raised any tax rates. Instead, we have chosen to enhance tax revenue collection through administrative reforms by simplifying and streamlining tax laws to make them clearer and easier to implement, thereby by improving taxpayer compliance. The process also involves rationalization of tax expenditure to enhance equity and fairness. Mr. Speaker, the revenue foregone through tax incentives or tax expenditure has increased significantly, rising from Kenya shillings 393.1 billion, which is equivalent to 2.9% of GDP in 2022, to 510.6 billion, which is equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2023. To reverse this trend, the Finance Bill of 2025 proposes reforms to rationalize tax expenditures so as to promote equity, fairness, efficiency, and reduce distortions within the tax system. The proposed reforms are in line with the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy, which this Honorable House passed. So, Mr. Speaker, from the proposed reforms, we expect to raise Kenya shillings 30 billion more as additional revenue. Mr. Speaker, customs measures agreed upon by East African Community ministers during the pre-budget meeting are intended to protect our industries and ensure they access raw materials and inputs at affordable prices. The meeting allowed Kenya to import tea packaging materials at a lower duty rate of 10%. In addition, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission to import wheat at the rate of 10%. These measures will support our wheat and tea farmers. Mr. Speaker, I will begin with the customs measures and later provide highlights on the proposed amendments of tax laws in the Finance Bill of 2025. On customs measures, to meet the local demand of rice, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the East African Community Common External Tariff and import rice at the rate of 35% or USD 200 per metric ton, whichever is higher, instead of the common external tariff rate of 75% or USD 345 per metric ton. Mindful of wheat farmers in Kenya, East African Community ministers agreed on duty remission of wheat at a rate of 10% instead of the common external tariff rate of 35%, provided the millers who intend to import wheat under the duty remission must first purchase locally produced wheat. Mr. Speaker, to promote local assembly of telecommunication equipment, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission on inputs for assembly of telecommunication devices, including mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. Mr. Speaker, in order to reduce the production cost of animal feeds, Kenya requested for an extension to import inputs for production of animal feeds duty-free under the East African Community Duty Remission Scheme, which was granted. We urge the producers of animal feeds to apply for the remission. Mr. Speaker, the leather sector is one of the priority value chains under BETA. To support local producers of leather and leather products, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the common external tariff rate and apply import duty rate of 35% on leather products. To promote tanneries to supply local manufacturers with high quality leather, Kenya was allowed to import chemicals for leather processing under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, to support local assembly of transformers, which is critical to energy distribution, the East African Community Ministers approved Kenya's request for a tariff split on transformers to provide for a distinction between fully built and unassembled transformers. Currently, it is one line, tariff line, and it is very difficult for us to separate and incentivize either of them. So, Mr. Speaker, to support the local assemblers of cranes, Kenya was granted approval to import inputs for assembly of cranes duty-free under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, last year Kenya was granted a stay of application on the East African East African Community Common External Tariff to apply a higher duty rate ranging from 25 to 35% on certain types of paper used in manufacturing packaging materials. This action adversely affected exporters, particularly in tea sector. To address this, Kenya opted not to request for an extension of the stay of this common external tariff. And this decision will not affect local manufacturers of packaging materials, as they will continue importing raw materials under duty remission. So, Mr. Speaker, now let me speak to the Finance Bill of 2025. Let me now highlight some of the proposals contained in the proposed Finance Bill 2025. Under Income Tax Act. Mr. Speaker, to enable faster recovery of investment by businesses on loose items such as utensils, linen, and industrial tools, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to allow for a full cost deduction of these items in the first year of purchase, as opposed to the current 3 years. This will improve cash flows of the relevant businesses. Mr. Speaker, we have noted increased tax disputes arising from audits carried on cross-border transactions. These disputes could have been avoided if the multinational companies had advanced pricing agreements with the commissioner at KRA. To address this gap, the bill is proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to empower the commissioner to enter into advanced pricing agreements with multinational companies. Mr. Speaker, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, introduced the minimum top-up tax in line with global best practices. But the Act inadvertently omitted the due date for payment of the tax, thus creating enforcement challenges. To address this, I have proposed an amendment to the Income Tax Act to clarify that the due date will be the end of the 4th month following the close of a company's accounting period. Mr. Speaker, again, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, exempted gratuity payments from income tax, actually pension and gratuity. However, the provision is not clear whether all gratuity, including from private pension schemes, is exempted from tax. In this respect, the bill is proposing to amend the Income Tax Act to clarify that all gratuity payments, whether from public or private sources, are exempt from tax. Mr. Speaker, to encourage wider participation in virtual asset transactions, especially among the youth, the bill proposes to reduce the digital asset tax rate from 3% to 1.5%. And Mr. Speaker, to ensure consistency and effective administration of the law, the bill proposes to amend the third schedule to the Income Tax Act to clarify that fringe benefit tax is payable by the employer at the corporate tax rate, and that withholding tax on qualifying dividends and qualifying interest are final tax. That is not clear in the current arrangement. And Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages, and honorable members would be interested in listening to this. Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages for purchasing or improving residential houses can claim tax relief on interest payment on the mortgage. However, those who take up a mortgage to construct their own residential houses are excluded from this relief. That is the law as it is today. To ensure fairness, the bill proposes to extend this benefit to interest on mortgages taken for construction of residential houses. This will support home ownership and align with the better pillar on affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, the current tax-free daily subsistence allowance of $2,000 for private sector employees on official duties outside their usual workplace is lower than that of the public sector employees. To enhance equity, the bill is proposing to increase the tax-free daily subsistence allowance for private sector employees from 2,000 to 10,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has an opportunity to strengthen its position as a regional financial hub. In this respect, the bill proposes amendment to the Income Tax Act to provide that companies certified by the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, NIFCA, that invest new capital of at least 3 billion over a period of 3 years to pay a reduced corporate tax rate of 15% for the first 10 years and 20% for the subsequent 10 years. The companies qualifying for this will be required to employ Kenyans at senior management level. The startup companies that are certified by Nairobi International Financial Center Authority will enjoy a 15% tax rate for the first 3 years and 20% for the subsequent 4 years. And dividends earned by certified holding companies and regional headquarters will be exempted from tax provided that at least 250 million is reinvested annually in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have noted that some employees seek refunds from KRA on reliefs of deductions that ought to have been deducted by their employers. To address this challenge, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to make it mandatory for employers to consider all eligible tax reliefs and deductions when computing employees' income tax. Presently, employers are not compelled to deduct these reliefs in computing pay as you earn. Value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, while a supplier is required to issue a tax invoice at the point of sale, there is currently no definition of tax invoice under the VAT Act. This creates ambiguity on what constitutes a tax invoice. To resolve this ambiguity, the bill is proposing to amend the VAT Act to define a tax invoice. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen tax administration and enhance compliance, the bill proposes to require the issuance of tax invoices for all suppliers, whether taxable or exempt. This amendment will support better record keeping by taxpayers and facilitate the pre-population of returns. Mr. Speaker, to support business operations, the bill proposes to shorten the period for claiming refunds on bad debts from 3 years to 2 years, and to allow taxpayers to either request for a refund or offset it against future VAT liabilities. Mr. Speaker, again, entities in special economic zones currently benefit from VAT exemptions and zero rating, but there is no provision to recover tax when these benefits are misused or abused. To safeguard revenue and promote accountability, the bill proposes to recover VAT where exempted or zero-rated goods or services are used for purposes other than those intended. Mr. Speaker, to prevent leakages or revenue leakages, strengthen tax administration, and promote equity across sectors, the bill proposes to move some zero-rated goods and services that are consumed locally to exempt status. Further, Mr. Speaker, some of the goods exempted from VAT have multiple uses, making it difficult to effectively monitor whether they are finally used for the intended purpose. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the VAT Act to remove such exemptions. Under excise duty, Mr. Speaker, to minimize tax disputes relating to classification of locally produced accessible goods, the bill proposes an amendment to the Excise Duty Act to clarify that the East African Community Common External Tariff and its classification rules shall apply to all accessible goods, both imported and locally manufactured. Mr. Speaker, to streamline the processing of application for license to manufacture accessible goods by the Commissioner, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to require the Commissioner to provide feedback on the application within 14 working days from the date of receipt of all valid documents. Mr. Speaker, the Excise Duty Act provides for taxation of alcoholic beverages based on pure alcoholic content, which increased cost for producers using spirits over 90% alcohol content as raw materials from 356 shillings to about 1,000 shillings per litre. Since undenatured extra neutral alcohol is a key input in the manufacturing of spirituous beverages, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to provide an excise duty rate of 500 shillings per litre for undenatured extra neutral alcohol above 90% strength supplied to licensed spirituous beverage manufacturers. Mr. Speaker, to promote equity and fairness in taxation of accessible services offered through the internet or electronic network, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to bring non-resident persons without a physical presence in Kenya into the tax net when they supply accessible services through these mediums. Mr. Speaker, to avoid double taxation of fees charged by digital lenders, the bill proposes to amend the definition of digital lender under the Excise Duty Act to exclude entities licensed under the Banking Act, the Cooperative Societies Act, and the Microfinance Act. Honorable members, to enhance clarity and consistency in the administration of excise duty legislation, the bill is proposing to amend the Excise Duty Act to clarify that imported plastic products, including plates, self-adhesive plastics, and printed polymers, will be subjected to excise duty at 25% of the excise value, or 200 per kilogram, whichever is higher. Now let me speak to miscellaneous fees and levies. Mr. Speaker, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy on billets and wire rods, which are raw materials in manufacture of nails, fencing wires, gabions, bolts, and nuts, have raised production costs of these products. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to review the levy downwards. Mr. Speaker, to promote Nairobi as regional aircraft maintenance hub while managing tax expenditures, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to introduce import declaration fee and railway development levy on small aircrafts and helicopters, but retain the exemption on spare parts of all aircrafts. The Tax Procedures Act, 2015. No, the Act is 2015. Mr. Speaker, to enhance the Commissioner's ability to recover unpaid taxes from non-residents, the bill is proposing to amend the Tax Procedures Act to expand the scope of agency notices to include non-resident persons. Mr. Speaker, and this is controversial, to close a loophole that hinders enforcement of tax compliance and ensure timely revenue collection, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to clarify that enforcement of tax collection when a tax appeals tribunal or a court judgment on tax dispute is in favor of the Commissioner shall only be suspended where a stay order has been granted. That is not the one that I thought I was going to read. The controversial one is yet to come. Mr. Speaker, to remove the financial and legal barriers that may hinder effective enforcement of recovery of unpaid taxes, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to provide that property transfers made by or to the Commissioner in recovery of tax liabilities be exempted from stamp duty. Mr. Speaker, to promote transparency, uphold fair administrative action, and strengthen trust in tax administration, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to require the Commissioner to provide reasons when issuing amended tax assessments to a taxpayer, so that we avoid misuse of Kenya Revenue Authority for political reasons, where they just sit and tell you that 3 years ago you did not pay such and such, and yet you had already been cleared for tax purposes. Reasons must be provided. Mr. Speaker, to address taxpayers' concerns regarding penalties and interest arising from system-related delays or administrative errors beyond taxpayers' control, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to allow the Cabinet Secretary to grant waivers on penalties and interest arising from such circumstances upon recommendation by the Commissioner. Presently, if there is any error made by the Kenya Revenue Authority on your tax assessment, there is no law to reverse it. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker and fellow Kenyans, we have experienced a wide range of challenges as a nation in the past 2 years. In navigating these trying times, we have demonstrated exceptional resilience and remained steadfast in our development and democratic journey. Kenyans have demonstrated commendable patience and resilience as the government continues to fulfill its commitments to improve livelihoods through the implementation of better. And under the leadership of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, we have made meaningful progress in advancing our development agenda, promoting inclusion, fostering national unity, and working together to build our nation and renew the spirit of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, the budget I have presented today has been thoughtfully prepared to navigate the delicate balance of competing interests while adhering to our fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the policies and structural reforms I have outlined provide a solid foundation for sustaining our socio-economic transformation. These measures are designed to stimulate job creation, strengthen our economic recovery, and ease the cost of living. I therefore call upon honorable members and all Kenyans to support the implementation of the budget as we work together in pursuit of shared prosperity. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the journey to a prosperous Kenya calls for leadership and collective commitment of all Kenyans. Last year, the Orange Democratic Movement joined hands with the United Democratic Alliance under Kenya Kwanza to form a broad-based government. This unity has brought renewed peace and stability to Kenya and fostered inclusive development beyond tribal lines. I wish Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish to acknowledge with gratitude the unwavering leadership and vision of His Excellency the President Dr. William Samoei Ruto and His Excellency the Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki. I also wish to recognize the invaluable efforts of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, my fellow Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, Accounting Officers, and all personnel across government ministries, departments, and agencies who have diligently contributed to the development of the financial year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Raila. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, I sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and the entire Orange Democratic Movement fraternity for their invaluable mentorship as well as trusting me with party leadership positions in my political journey. But Mr. Speaker, I will not forget that I served the people of Suba South constituency as their elected representative for a period of 15 years and a further 2 years as nominated member of parliament before my appointment to the cabinet. I truly appreciate the people of Suba South constituency for the opportunity they gave me to serve them, and I will remain forever grateful. In addition, I served in the leadership of parliament as a minority leader, and equally, I appreciate the support accorded to me by this House and its leadership during my tenure. My sincere appreciation goes first to you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, and your counterparts in the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, and the entire House leadership, including respective clerks, supporting the approval process of the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Second, to honorable chairs and members of both the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance and National Planning Committee and all the other departmental committees of this House, as well as the staff of Parliamentary Budgets Office for their constructive inputs and leadership during the approval process of this budget. Third, my colleagues at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, led by Dr. Chris Kipto, the Principal Secretary for the National Treasury, Dr. Boniface Barasa Makoha, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, and Mr. Cyril Wagunda Odede, the Principal Secretary for Public Investments and Assets Management, for their commitment, dedication, and support in the preparation of this budget. Fourth, special appreciation goes to Mr. James Muhati, the former Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, for his unwavering commitment and invaluable support during the first half of the financial year. His dedication and strategic leadership greatly advanced the ministry's mandate and played a pivotal role in shaping key national economic planning initiatives. Fifth, my appreciation goes to the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as the management and staff of both institutions, the financial sector regulators, and other MDAs for their valuable contributions to the budget process. Sixth, my gratitude goes to our multilateral and bilateral development partners for their continued technical and financial support. Seventh, I also thank the private sector for their participation and contribution in the budget process. And eighth, I wish to appreciate the media and non-state actors for their active engagement and participation in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Mr. Speaker, I forever remain indebted to my beloved wife, Madam Rhoda Mbadi, and my children, who is here in the Speaker's Gallery, and my children for their support and inspiration as I execute my duties at the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Their prayers and guidance gave me the zeal to proceed even during my lowest moments. I remain deeply grateful also to my siblings for raising me, paying my school fees, and supporting me throughout my journey. Mr. Speaker, I am sure that my late parents, Jadung Stanislaus Ngongomoth and his babe, Slermina Yambu Ngongo, with my mother, are smiling down from above as they see their youngest son perform this great service for the great people of Kenya today. God is truly faithful. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, my utmost gratitude goes to all Kenyans for their contributions during the budget process. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, you will recall that I have already submitted to this House the budget estimates and the Finance Bill 2025, together with the accompanying documents as required by the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Today, I further submit the following documents for this August House and request that you graciously receive them. 1, budget statement for the financial year 2025-26. 2, the 2025 budget policy statement. 3, estimates of revenue, grants and loans for the financial year 2025-2026. 4, financial statements for the financial year 2025-26. 5, medium-term debt management strategy 2025. 6, budget highlights, the Mwananchi Guide for the financial year 2025-26. And finally, statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial year 2025-2026. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Minister. You may now take your seat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, after a 2 hours address, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, John Mbadi, has concluded his presentation and reading of the budget 2025-2026. And remember, this is the first budget he reads as Cabinet Secretary since the formation of the broad-based government. So it is being referred to as a broad-based budget. Now, there are some of the key things that I'll be able to take you through very quickly as we prepare for our evening coverage from 6 to 8 p.m. Now, this is a 4.23 trillion Kenyan shillings budget. Ladies and gentlemen, the first one that is over 4 trillion shillings, and that's a huge figure. But the question really is, does it factor your basic needs like education, health, access to basic services like water, electricity? Are you able to afford transportation? And so a 4.23 trillion Kenyan shillings budget, we're looking at projected revenue by the Kenya Revenue Authority at 3.3 trillion shillings. That means we have a deficit of 1 trillion shillings, and this will be funded through external borrowing or domestic borrowing. Now, as we speak, Kenya's debt status is at 11.36 trillion Kenyan shillings. That's a huge figure. And so the debt burden continues to be a conversation in the country. Now, very quickly, the recurrent expenditure is at 3.19 billion Kenyan shillings. This means money that goes to ministries, to state departments, just to keep the government running, is at 3.1 billion Kenyan shillings. Development expenditure, money meant for roads, for constructing, schools, for constructing classrooms, is at 643.9 billion shillings, as well as the county government's allocation is at 474.9 billion shillings. As we speak, the National Assembly and the Senate are deadlocked over the county division of revenue bill. And so it is also something that we'll be keeping tabs to see whether or not this money, 474.9 billion shillings, will all be allocated to the 47 county governments, or a lower amount as had been suggested by the National Treasury. Now, the judiciary will be allocated 25.79 billion shillings, the executive 2.49 trillion shillings, and the legislature at 42.5 billion shillings. Year in, year out, the judiciary has always been allocated the least amount of money. Now, according to the CS, John Mbadi, he says the country's spending priorities are in agriculture, in MSMEs, in housing, in universal health coverage, for the digital superhighway, as well as education. Those are key spending priorities for the government: agriculture, MSMEs, housing, UHC, digital superhighway, and education, just to ensure that, for the economy really to be able to do well, these are some of the areas that they need to work on. He also says, by the way, the economy has improved since the financial year 2023-2024. So those are some of the numbers really that he has been able to read out. This is a budget, he says, that is meant to focus on sealing tax loopholes and ensuring compliance with some of the proposals that have been put up, or regulations you may call, by the Kenya Revenue Authority. Amendments have also been made to the income tax, which he says are meant to boost the economy as well as grow businesses. We've got 5 key tax laws in the country, including income tax, the value added tax, the excise duty tax, as well as the Tax Procedures Act and the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act. So those are some of the things that we'll be able to really talk about on more in the evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Now, the revenue collection carry has been able to do an improvement from the period July 2024 to April 2025, collecting 1.906 trillion shillings, which is an improvement of about 3.6% compared to the previous financial year, which is 2023-2024. Now, one key important conversation as well that we'll be having this evening concerning the finance bill is also on the fact that there is no finance bill 2024 in place as we speak. Basically, the country has been operating on supplementary budgets, about 2 to 3 supplementary budgets. And so coming off a period where we do not have a finance bill, and coming into a period where we will be having a finance bill if everything goes according to plan, then what does this mean for the economy? Have there sectors that have really suffered in the year 2024, or ministries that have not really gotten the money that they were hoping to get following the withdrawal of the finance bill from Parliament? And so that is a key conversation that we will be looking to have later on. Now, the biggest beneficiaries include the Ministry of Defence, which has been allocated 13 billion shillings more. Talk about the agriculture sector and the health, which retains most money at the national government. We'll also be having a conversation around some of these devolved functions which the national government continues to hold, including housing. Also talk about agriculture as well as education. Now, we'll also be having a conversation around the concept of bottom-up, because the CS says this particular budget is a bottom-up economic transformation model. Now, that's a concept that talks about coming from the bottom to the top. But what we are seeing is that whatever is in place, the institutions, the systems, the financial model that we have in place is still a trickle-down effect, basically coming from the top all the way to the bottom. So the question really is, has the bottom-up idea always been a dream which is yet to come to life? And so those are some of the conversations we'll be having in just a few minutes. So allow me to wrap it up at that point, because coming within the next few minutes, we'll be back in this place with our guests just to have a key look on this particular budget, 2025 actually, 2026, putting in mind that we're seeing protests across the Nairobi Central Business District with slogans being chanted, no justice, no budget. And so what does this mean as well? You know, keeping in mind and going back to 2024 in the protest that we also saw, June has got something on this country. And so that is also a conversation we'll be having in just about, let's say, 22 minutes actually. We'll be back here with Belinda Williams as well as our panelists on set. So stay with us, don't go too far, we'll be back.